I've decided to keep a journal.
Hey everybody, welcome to Podcasty For Me, the podcast about film, culture, politics, and Paul Schrader, where we watch every film written and or directed by American filmmaker Paul Schrader and explore how they speak to their moment. And this one, this show's by two guys. I'm one of the guys. My name is Jake Serwin.
I'm one of the guys. My name is Ian Ryan. Jake, would you mind dropping in that clip from Dark where Ethan Hawke explains what is happening in a brain that's not working anymore, just to sort of set up the rest of the show?
That's funny. Yes, I will.
Okay.
Do it right here.
This is a cross-section of the brain of the protagonist of our story. Normal brain metabolic activity is shown in red. Green-blue shows abnormally low metabolism. Lack of metabolic activity, as indicated by a low uptake of fluoxyglucose, is caused by shrinkage in the frontal lobes.
Okay.
What if I put in like something from Gattaca where it's like, we have to stop the Gattaca machine, or like we have to start the Gattaca machine, whatever happens in Gattaca, I don't remember.
Yeah, he loves that machine.
It's like a sci-fi, it's like a sci-fi
he loves
talented
swimming.
And he loves Uma Thurman from O Canada. She's in O
And
Canada.
from his real wife also.
Oh, from his real, yeah. She was his life in real life. Gattaca is a science fiction talented Mr. Ripley, as far as I can remember, right? Complete with real Jude Law.
Yes, it does.
I mean, I don't think he kills
him.
There's
no Freddy character. There's no Philip Seymour Hoffman appearance. So in that way, it's already inferior.
Very, very much so. Get ready for Freddy. I think that was the tagline for one of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I got sunburned. I got a little cold. And you know what? Gotta tell you, after having a bunch of illnesses that repeatedly turned me into King Theoden, it's pretty cool to just have a normal one. Just have one that's just kind of like very light annoyance. Totally fine. Very manageable.
But imagine how fucking good it would feel to have all of the like evil illness just wiped from you.
Sure.
Like in that dissolve, when they just dissolve to, by the way, rest in peace, Bernard Hill, who he's wonderful in that role, and in True Crime as well. Yep. But yeah, when it just kind of like cross dissolves to him not having the sick makeup on, that looks great. Doesn't that look great?
Well, I think it's beautiful. That? Yeah, it's sort of the cinematic equivalent of those makeup commercials where you get to use, maybe it's Maybelline, maybe it's Claritin. Like
on Hollywood Handbook, when they say the wrong thing during the commercial and they have to do it again.
Yeah. Just like that.
Yeah. Speaking of satisfying removals of disease, I've been watching a lot of professional ear cleaning videos.
Guess what, pal? Just got my ear cleaned last week.
Oh shit, really?
Yep.
Did you have a lot of wax? Did you have a plug?
It was fully occluded.
Oh shit.
Oh yeah.
Is that why the show's been like that? Did they? Nope. How did they do it? Did they lavage you, or did they pull?
They did a lavage.
Vacuum?
I don't want anybody pulling on anything.
Well, so here's what I've been watching. They're British guys and British audiologists or whatever, and they are talking you through the procedure on the endoscope, and they use the vacuum, which I had done at the allergist.
Okay.
And then they'll sometimes also very carefully use a hook or a pick to kind of, because I don't like that
either. I don't want a pick going in my ear. I know.
No, sure. But this is like, you've got quite a bit of wax defending your eardrum from this pick.
Yeah.
And they will also talk about how in these cases, the lavage, because lavage is where they basically, in my experience, they squirt water, they take a syringe, like a big plastic syringe that looks fake.
I've had it done twice. One with a big plastic syringe that looks fake, and one with basically the equivalent of those things they use to suck out mucus from babies' noses.
Oh, yeah, the little bulb. I was just talking about this yesterday because I don't know why.
What a weird couple of guys.
Yeah.
This is that Paul Schrader podcast. We're going to be talking about the film Dying of the Light.
We're talking about the film Dying of the Light.
What? Please go on.
Recut dark. No, because I saw a video of Cardi B on the red carpet, like right after she had her baby. And she was talking about how she's enjoying having taking care of the baby. And like the one thing she names is, I'm sucking out his boogers. But also, if you can believe
you know what?
Cardi B says the word boogers in a very pleasant way to listen to it. Yeah.
And that's parenting. I'm happy to hear it.
What a figure. Yeah. Not really looking into her beliefs too closely. But from what I can tell, dynamite entertainer.
Yep. So
Dying of the Light
film.
Dying of the Light's on the hey, speaking of Lord of the Rings, looks like Dying of the Light's back on the menu, boys.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess we didn't see when meat was on the menu for them before either. So that the listener has not seen when Dying of the Light is on the menu for us.
It's true. So there's some continuity to what that Urukai says.
Has it been a long time since we recorded, or am I just insane? Because I feel...
It's been like 2 weeks since we recorded.
Okay,
it's been a good stretch. Yeah, for us, it's been a while.
Yeah. So, real quick, if you'd like to support the show, first of all, God bless you.
Yeah, thanks so much.
I'm a God guy now. You can subscribe to our Patreon. It's the best way to support the dang show. $5 a month. This gets you a bonus episode every other week. Talk about Clint Eastwood stuff over there still. Talk about Clint ephemera, films from before Play Misty for Me. We talked about some Sergio Leone stuff.
Yep.
Dipping into the Schrader a little bit here. I have an announcement later in the episode for a truly painful assignment that I'm going to give my co-host and myself.
Whoa. This is news to me.
It's fine. Okay. It won't ever happen, but something to look forward to. So head on over to patreon.com/podcasty for me. Go ahead and kick us $5 if you feel like it. And don't worry, we don't get all of the $5. Some of it goes to the bald guy who owns Patreon and is in the band Pomplamoose.
Yeah. In case you were worried about not supporting the band Pomplamoose, you're covered.
What's most infuriating is that he is quite gifted at the keys.
Well,
so
could have made a living doing that, and just
I think he does technically.
Oh,
also, but just by like force
2
of
livings. Save some for the rest of us, pal.
He's like his own Rebecca Black, you know?
Okay, gotcha.
He is Rebecca Black's father and Rebecca Black herself put together.
I see.
He's his own. He is both Hearst and Marion Davies.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Yep.
Should we get into the 2 questions, our signature segment?
Let's get into the 2 questions, man. Let's do it.
Let's do the 2 questions, our signature segment. This is, of course, our signature segment, the 2 questions, where we ask each other 2 questions and get to know one another. I don't know. Why do we do it?
Yeah, that's why.
Why do we fight?
We recently staked a claim. I think I staked a claim. You can be on board with it or not. And both are good.
No, I don't even meet.
Yep. Where I said that the reason we do it is to be honest with listeners about how we are interpreting these films and the world around us.
I think that's right. That's right. Beautifully put. My 2 question for you, in the spirit specifically of Dying of the Light and of my understanding of this film prior to my watching it. Have you ever been rented a film from a Redbox machine?
Yep.
Like a bunch of them, or one that you remember?
A card-carrying Redbox member. No, I don't know if they have memberships. I think they might.
Mm-hmm.
I was in Tahoe once, and sometimes you're in Tahoe, and you're with your girlfriend, and you want to enjoy a film, and the internet doesn't work that well there, so you can't stream anything.
I believe that.
So what are you going to do? You're going to go to Safeway. And you're going to find a little safe haven for physical media, for cinema lovers around the world. And that's the Redbox.
I mean, I love the Redbox in concept. Mm-hmm. It's just that the kind of anonymous, obviously shot in a former Soviet direct to right there action film starring somebody who doesn't get to, like, used to be a 20 million a picture guy.
Right, yep.
And isn't anymore. That has come to kind of besmirch the name of the Redbox. But, like, if there was genuinely a vending machine at Safeway or CVS or whatever where you could go grab...
Like 2B quality movies?
Well, no, I was going to say, just like, it should have, like, AFI top 100 in there.
Yep.
Because that thing is the size of a refrigerator that can fit 100 discs. 200. Get 2 copies of each or whatever.
Right.
And it's not, look, I think Forrest Gump's on there, which sucks, but also like fucking, The Searchers is on there. And then you get, stuff from the last 2 years or whatever.
Somebody accidentally watches The Red Shoes and changes their life. That'd be pretty cool.
Exactly. From The Wizard of Oz. You mean they're just looking at those the whole time?
Yeah.
No. Come on. It's a good movie.
Come on,
folks. So you rented...
Wish I could tell you what I rented. Was trying to think about that while you were speaking. All I remember is that it had one of those penalty systems where if you're 1 minute late, it costs you like $38 or something.
Oh yeah, that part is also
way more than any movie has ever cost to
because
produce.
Like who are they? It's one thing if it's like I used to work at a video store or something, and we had late fees of I think $5 a day or something,
right.
And those theoretically could have gone to pay the employees. They didn't in this case, but there were employees who could have been paid by that.
World. Yeah.
But the Redbox sits by itself. It's autonomous, except for the guy who shows up and like whatever cleans the quarters out of it or whatever the maintenance guy has to do.
Yeah, and I gotta make an assumption. Maybe this is unfair to the good people of South Tahoe, but in early December, when I could get time off of the hotel kitchen where I worked, going during the week and renting Green Room or whatever it was, I don't think there was a huge amount of competition because that is, of course, the reasoning. Huh?
Guy from This and That.
It's true. That's right. Yes.
And the Green Room guy has a new movie out like right now. As we record this, it's Rebel Ridge.
Old Jer
Fever.
Saul. Yeah.
Haven't seen it yet.
Me neither.
It's got Midsize Sedan in it.
That's
the guy who played Midsize Sedan in M. Night Shyamalan's Old is the lead of that film.
That's true. I can confirm this information. Yep.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
So you rented Green Room or whatever. Did it play well?
Yeah, it did. It was one of those old, it had like a DVD player with a aux cord that I had to figure out. Somehow you always have to figure it out. Whatever's going on back there. It doesn't hold. It doesn't stick. I don't know what's going on.
I don't think I've ever rented a film from a Redbox, but I have. In the depths of my Blu-ray mania, a lot of the guys on the forums, this is the Blu-ray.com forums.
Of course.
They'll tell you, the Redbox sells you discs. There's a period between when the discs are no longer being rented and when they are retrieved from the machine.
Like Blockbuster used to do back in the day.
Presumably to be turned into, like they're probably going to hang them from like crops to scare away birds.
Yeah.
I think those are actually to scare bugs.
Scare bugs?
My understanding is
why are people trying to scare bugs?
They're to like pests, like bugs that eat the crops. I remember hearing this because it imitates the slight what do you call it? Like pearlescence of a bird wing in flight. So the bugs think, oh, there's a bird there. Bird eats me. I will not bother this corn. But in this case, I went there. I tried so hard to buy. Because you just get like a naked disc,
right?
Like I think they give you like a paper sleeve or whatever, but you would have to supply your own case. And I have empty Blu-ray cases. Don't question me on that.
Nope.
But I remember standing at the Walgreens Redbox trying desperately to get it to let me buy the disc because I was at the point where it was like push the button here to buy this copy of whatever Snow White and the Huntsman. That's probably the kind of shit they had.
Great. Yeah.
And it just wouldn't go through. So
yeah, anything you do wrong will send you back to the beginning of like a 16-step menu process. So
yep, they make Jada Pinkett Smith live in one of their when she's not at the red table, she has to go in the red box.
Gotcha. Yeah. That's it's all right. We're circling something.
I got JPS on the brain.
Yeah, you sure do. We had a real synergy this week in movie prep, I gotta say. Worked out nicely.
When we were preparing to talk about the same movies. Yeah, we did both watch the movie that we were going to talk to each other about.
We finally lined up. I'm pretty psyched.
We're synced like Czech nurses.
We're synced like the widely disproven story of Czech nurses. Yes. I think they might have been the rare Polish Czech nurses also.
Oh, were they Polish nurses?
Yeah, I think so. Who cares?
Polish Czech. It's one of the more difficult stitches to do as a crocheter. What's your 2 question?
My 2 questions.
For the listener, I'm coming off of a week plus of over 100-degree weather, and today it's a merciful 90. So it's not so hot in here that I don't think the computer will work, which was what happened yesterday.
Yep.
But it is too hot in here to be not acting like this.
Your skull got brazed, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is also stupid, but it's fast, so that's merciful, huh?
Great.
What's the deal? This is just one of these fact-finding missions that I hit you with sometimes.
Yeah, sure.
What's going on when you read an Amazon review for a book? Maybe like 1 in 5 people, their entirety of their comment is the quality of the paper was excellent. 5 out of 5. What's happening there?
I gotta respect it.
Okay.
Because this person is coming. There's a couple different options here.
I thought maybe it was a robot. It's not a robot?
Well, yeah, this is one of the options.
All right.
Is that it's a robot, and the robot is like the tokens that it's analyzing tell it to refer to the qualities of the product.
Right.
And then when you look up qualities of book, it says made of paper, right?
Exactly. Right. Yeah.
Then there's another idea where this is someone who's thinking broadly, thinking globally, and acting locally. And they're thinking all these other reviews are going to talk about the content. They're probably not going to talk about
That's a good point.
The build quality of the book. And this is an important, like phenomenological part of the reading experience.
It's not part of the experience. You're right. It's part of the consumption.
Especially when you get one of those books. I don't think they really do this anymore, but I remember like the series of unfortunate events that stands out.
I bet you're one of those guys who didn't like those.
No, I did, but they had the edges. They had like unfinished edges to the pages, I think, to try to make them seem like old-fashioned tomes you had found or something.
I believe it was imitating the old book production process when you received a new book, you had to use a paper knife to cut open the pages.
Okay. I usually use a metal one, first of all. I find that it stands up to repeated use better. I don't like that. And so if there was anything weird, I mean, I could understand.
What? So, were you earlier responding to the question? You thought I was asking how you felt about the series of unfortunate event books.
No, you were asking me what's up with these reviews.
No, after that. Wow, we're already descending.
Something happened after that?
to dying of the lifestyle.
No, I'm actually
Madness.
dark. This is dark style.
Okay, this is dark style.
Yeah,
I asked
for me.
I bet you were one of those guys who didn't like that, and I meant type of a paper cut, and you said,
"Oh, I thought you meant one of the guys who didn't like those books."
Yeah, that's what I thought.
See, now we're getting into this is sort of the question that's coming up here, because really, I feel like those reviewers should go to Goodreads.
I see.
Goodreads should be about the sort of ephemeral text of the book.
Okay.
And then the actual sort of manufactured copy of the book.
Yeah.
Walter Benjamin would have a field day with this.
He would.
He's having one now. He's some bones beneath one.
I believe he got lost in the mountains between France and Spain when he was fleeing the Nazis. Yep. And he died there.
Sorry.
Yeah,
sorry, Walter.
Not in a field.
Well.
There's fields in the mountains. Yeah.
There's a meadow.
Right.
Anyway, that's what I think is going on with those.
Okay. 2 good answers.
Yeah. Amazon reviews, one of life's great pleasures. Just to see what the fuck is going on with everybody else, you know?
Almost always can find somebody talking about being a grandma, buying a book for somebody, or being the grandchild
that's exactly
of
what I
somebody
thought
being
of.
bought a
My
book
grandson
for.
loved this. Yeah.
Yes.
My grandson loved this.
That rocks, man.
It's like a Blu-ray of the documentary about showgirls. My grandson loved this. Why are they putting out those kind of documentaries on Blu-ray?
That's don't know.
Something I mean, I know you just want to make money. And today we're going to be talking about...
You're setting us up. Yeah, that was smart. You're a pro. Why are they doing things to try to make money?
We're talking about Dying of the Light and Dark, which...
Can you give us a little explanation for the uninitiated? Why we're talking about 2 movies?
Yes, exactly. So it's one film, essentially. I would argue that there's a Paul Schrader film that we're discussing today, and it's the film Dark. And then there is a taken away and edited by someone else and released as if it were a Paul Schrader film. In fact, with the words "a Paul Schrader film"
that's correct.
over the end credits.
Yep.
that everyone involved completely disavowed, and that's called Dying of the Light. And so we're talking about both of them. Obviously, there was a Paul Schrader script involved from the very beginning.
Yeah, that's the thing that makes this a little bit more complicated, because otherwise I would just straight up tell people to just ignore one of these films. Although I will make my recommendation now to say, I actually want to make a call. You're usually the one asking listeners to do things. My turn.
Okay.
I want the listeners to watch Dark, particularly if you've not seen Dying of the Light, and tell us about your experience. Because I will say straight up, I regret having watched Dying of the Light first. I thought it would give me context for the actual work of Paul Schrader. I will say I enjoyed Dark so much more, and I'm curious what the experience of watching that film is like without the additional plot information and also just the shade of this other text hanging over it. Dying of the Light is a piece of shit, I should say.
Yeah, it's absolute dookie.
Part of the concern for me here.
Yeah, it reminds me of a sort of, this is kind of a apocryphal, probably never happened, Urban Dictionary style prank that in middle school we like to talk about, called the upper decker.
Yeah,
which is where you defecate into the tank of a toilet, and so every time it is flushed, there is more excremental
Truly
water
awful.
being added to the toilet.
Disgusting concept.
And so that's kind of the level of quality we're talking about with Dying of the Light.
Yep.
And then, well, let's just get into it.
Okay.
So Paul Schrader writes a script called Dying of the Light that is, to his mind, simply a commercially minded script he's going to sell to make some money to, probably put into the Canyons 2 or whatever.
Right.
This is just one of those one for them things that's, he's done a lot of this earlier in his career, hasn't really done as much that we know of, but I'm sure he also sold stuff that just never went anywhere. But anyway, it gets a couple interesting people attached to it, namely Harrison Ford from Mosquito Coast and Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny.
That's right.
And a hot new director from Denmark, Nicholas Winding Refn, who is he's off he's done the Pusher movies.
Yes.
Well, he's also done Bronson, and he's done Valhalla Rising, both of which got a lot of buzz, and people are like, this is an interesting new guy. So Harrison Ford gets attached, and so does Channing Tatum in the role that would eventually be played by Anton Yelchin, which is very funny because those are two extremely different physical types.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like replacing Arnold Schwarzenegger with John Lovitz or something. It's just different guys.
Exactly. Yep.
So apparently, as Refn tells it, and who knows if you can trust that guy, he seems like a real piece of work.
I think he's written some interesting and directed some interesting films, I should say. I also agree with you that he seems like a piece of work.
I've seen the documentary that his wife made about him making Only God Forgives, and he doesn't come across well.
Yep. Comes across like those chefs on Netflix specials where you realize that other people are just holding the entirety of their life together and also are doing triage for their socialization. And you just think, wow, this has really taken some of the pleasure out of visiting this restaurant.
And then
to me.
Apparently, Jamie Lee Curtis plays his mom or something. I don't know. I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
That's The Bear?
Yes.
Haven't seen The Bear. Not going to watch The Bear. So, but as Refn tells it, Harrison Ford balked at the idea of dying at the end of the movie, which, it's in the title of the script.
Suggested
you
very
didn't even
strongly.
have to read the script.
You're right.
Which it's also very funny because that was famously his stipulation for returning for The Force Awakens. I'll only do it if you kill me.
Yeah.
But in this case, he didn't want to die at the end. There are a number of, I don't know if you saw this, there are a number of press references to this project that refer to it as concerning a CIA agent who's going blind.
I saw
that. Did you see
that.
this at all?
Yeah, this is one of those baffling things.
I think that's probably just a game of telephone where one guy got it wrong and then two other people cited him.
You can imagine it's pretty easy to assume that there's probably a 2-sentence logline press release that said something about degenerative disease. Somebody made the leap to degenerative macular disease or something.
They
and that was
may also have simply gotten it confused with the Bruce Springsteen and Manfred Mann's Earth Band song. That's not out of the realm of possibility.
It's true. Yep. 2 bands we've talked about a strange number of times on this podcast. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The realm of possibility, by the way, Minecraft can do anything.
Not true at all.
No, I haven't played it. So, what am I looking up here? I was going to look something up inconspicuously, and now it's become very conspicuous.
Yeah, sure has.
Anyway, fuck. So, Ford walks by Refn's account, and then he decides to go and make the film Drive.
Yeah.
He remains on as executive producer, and he also has complimentary things to say about Schrader, and says the Drive couldn't exist without American Gigolo, for example.
Yes.
The first film in which a guy drives a car.
Right.
But I mean, I get it. It's a guy standing around looking cool.
Well, and particularly this kind of what is later called like vaporwave aesthetic, or what iconically 80s aesthetic comes through in both films.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That may explain some of like why I'm talking and thinking like this. Some kind of a vaporous wave. Could be
some type of a Havana syndrome. Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, we do have to talk about the Sidney Pollack film Havana that was based at some point on a Paul Schrader script. Speaking of Havana syndrome.
Don't know about this. Great.
It's got Robert Redford. It's about like a guy who's there right before the revolution or something.
Okay. We do got to talk about it. And I think this is still relevant to our discussion right now, because I would make an argument that the film that this is closest to of all of his films, maybe the Yakuza.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
That's actually quite interesting to think about. So the film, it goes into, I don't know, turnaround. That's probably not the right. Chad Harbold, write in, tell me whether I'm right about that being the right. It's like languishing for a bit.
Yep.
And then Schrader gets tapped to direct it himself. He decides he's going to direct it himself. He gets Nicolas Cage involved.
And this, I got to say, for those who have not seen the film, is like a softball pitch choice, basically. This is at the peak, perhaps, of the, I don't know, like meta cinema fan narrative about Nicolas Cage as, is he good? Is he crazy?
He famously also had an enormous tax bill or something. He had some...
He did, yes. Where he was building
some difficult financial circumstances.
Grave in the New Orleans cemetery. And yeah.
I don't think Nicolas Cage... He at least had a period where he was not making great decisions with money, and it resulted in him doing a lot of jobs for money. But he's one of those guys who somehow... never seems to phone it in, despite being in so many movies you've never heard of.
I agree. I think neither of us are among those who espouse this, to me, kind of boring narrative about look how bad of an actor he is, or look how foolish he is. But I just meant to say that this film is about a man who is losing his emotional inhibitions as part of the aforementioned degenerative brain disease, and in that sense really lines up with Nicolas Cage in the popular imagination at this point.
Sorry, I'm just like losing my mind. So I was trying to look up this film that Christopher Plummer did. That's another guy with dementia and a gun type of movie. And I'm learning that Amanda Plummer is Christopher Plummer's daughter.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. And she looks exactly like him. What's going on with me? Fucking...
Cool, very cool.
Can we get some ice in here? Can we get some ice in here?
Yep.
The movie is called Remember. Cool name of a movie to forget. Oh, and this is sort of a combination of Adam Resurrected and Dying of the Light, because he's an Auschwitz survivor with dementia who goes John Wick mode, basically.
I mean,
Adam McGoyan film.
The 2000. Oh, wow. Okay. The 2010s real hot moment for the amnesia, dementia, Alzheimer's film.
I mean, this is the Redbox special, the aging.
I was also thinking you're still Alice's,
right. Yeah, we had a number. It was de rigueur to make it. You have Amour, I think,
the Notebook.
Involved also.
That's right. Yep.
The Notebook. Finding Dory.
It's true. He's right.
And Finding Nemo has a guy from Drive in it.
That's
Albert
true.
Brooks.
And it's a guy from Taxi Driver. Another Drive film.
That's crazy. We are the fish.
That's
if you said that.
David Foster Wallace. Yeah.
Killed himself on my birthday, 2008. Back to the movie. So, So Schrader comes on. He gets Cage involved. But the people who are financing this thing, now, granted, they had just The Wolf of Wall Street.
These are some interesting
big movie,
folks.
Big movie.
Yes.
Big movie,
Huge.
big screen. I loved it.
Yep.
Nominated,
of course,
for lots of
to Schrader,
Academy Awards. Also, one of those very exciting movies where you just watch a new movie star emerge from thin air with Margot Robbie. That's always fun.
Yep.
Same year. But this is, of course, I'm talking about
Red Granite.
It's called Red Granite Pictures.
Yes.
I think there's like two different versions of it. There's Red Granite and Red Granite International or something. Anyway, this is the one that is funded with entirely stolen money from the Malaysia Development Fund. The big Malaysia Development Fund scandal, like maybe the biggest case of fraud in human history, I think, in terms of dollars taken.
Yeah, it's totally insane. It really
a couple people are still fugitives from justice from this thing, like on yachts, like yacht fugitives. Yeah. So the money comes from there. There's also a guy who's like, there's another part of the funding comes from some like weirdo who nobody knows what his real name is, and he directed a movie that he also stars in, despite not being a real guy, like that kind of stuff.
Did not see this. This is very fascinating as well. Okay.
And as Schrader puts it, basically these guys there's a really good article on this called Paul Schrader's Secret New Movie, How the Director Resurrected a Wild Nicolas Cage Performance Without Permission by Eric Cohn in IndieWire. But there's a great article in this, and he basically explains that there's a quotation here. He says, Schrader characterized the experience as the ultimate wake-up call for a man who came of age clashing with executives in the old studio system. You could weasel one against the other, work the room, and come up with something interesting, he said. These guys, they were all relatively new to movies, and they saw this as a good financial model. Get a director, talk a star into cutting his price, lowball the production, pre-sell it to VOD. It wasn't about the film at all. 1 week after Schrader realized he would not be able to... Okay, so we'll get to that in a second. But he describes these guys as like viewing this as a product indistinguishable from making paper clips or whatever.
Yeah, a product they can disrupt also by applying economic ideas from other industries. Classic.
Yeah, industries that
misapprehension
probably don't work and are Uber.
We're also based on exploitative labor. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So he's making the movie. They shoot it mostly in Romania and then a little bit of the Gold Coast of Australia for Kenya.
Yep.
And he is in the edit, and this is where stuff starts to go bad. It says he wanted to give the movie an erratic, viscerally unsettling quality to simulate Evan's mental downward spiral. Evan is the Nicolas Cage character, but he only figured that out after he'd shot it. He cited Stan Brakhage as an inspiration, and then.
And I'm going to interrupt here just to say I appreciate that honesty, because based strictly on the script, we're going to see him make a bunch of cuts that support this erratic style in a way that I think is almost entirely positive. I'm a huge fan of the changes he makes to the film, but it does sort of force you to wonder. There was a stage at which he was not imagining this, because it's the script, as far as we understand it, and as far as the material that we see, that he was still responsible for shooting, even if the color timing and the editing and all this stuff was taken away from him. There must have been a stage where he was imagining including a more conventional story, a more conventional shooting style.
But basically he's pushing the editing to try to reflect a decaying mental state, and that is not how he shot the film at all. So this is all in the edit. And so this article on IndieWire got access to a bunch of emails and things like this. And it says the company's joint email, this is the production company's, included guidelines for, quote, focusing structure and story to maximize the intrigue and tension, end quote, and berated Schrader from distracting from Cage's performance with, quote, gimmicks and sound cues. I would argue it's pretty hard to distract from his performance. It will withstand any attempted distraction.
Yes, yeah.
They took issue with sequences designed to replicate Evans' slippery grasp on reality. Quote, "We should set one or two rules to the hallucinations," and found the handful of chase scenes lacking intrigue. Quote, "The action needs more creative editing." That's very funny to say that. You need to be more creative with the editing, but also less creative with the editing. Yep. Another pressed for, quote, "more Sergio Leone-style close-ups of Cage." That's interesting. This guy thinks that Sergio Leone invented the close-up, first of all.
That's interesting also because Schrader's final version, Dark, includes way more extreme close-ups.
Extreme close-ups. And we will get to the technique he used in order to get them. But
correct. Yep.
And they also said that he uses an anti-Arab slur in the film, which I will not repeat, but it's probably the one you're thinking of that refers to kind of cloth head covering.
Yeah.
And it says, "The use of the word in the film is gratuitous and should be eliminated. It is not used responsibly here, and the film is better than that," which is so crazy because its removal from the film and consequently its reinsertion into the dark version is like basically the whole, it changes the theme of the film entirely to me.
Changes every potential argument that the film is making. Yes, it's astounding. And again, I'm gonna contend that maybe Schrader had a little bit of, come to God moment about what the film was saying, and maybe he regretted some of it after seeing the studio version. But yeah, it's crazy to say that this is making the film less racist.
Well, it is.
I'm gonna lay out the argument, the plot of Dying of the Light, and you're gonna decide whether it's racist or not.
Yeah, I mean, I think what they want is a Redbox movie that goes down like applesauce, and that word in there would bump. And I guess so. Schrader says the following day he sends an email that says, and I do kind of admire his "I'm Paul Schrader, who the fuck are you?" tone here. He says, "I'm baffled by the fact that anyone would choose to make a film originated by Paul Schrader, written by him, directed by him, and not to have a, quote, Paul Schrader film." This is Paul Schrader saying this again. "If you exert your will on me, take the film away from me, recut, and end up with a film that both Paul Schrader and Nicolas Cage disown, is that a victory to you? It will be more commercial. Will it be better?" And
now listeners have heard this before because we went through this when we discussed Dominion. This is something that Schrader is probably already pretty testy about because he's seen this unfold before. This exact idea of saying, you hired me to be me. If you wanted a conventional, boring film, why didn't you pay for any number of conventional, boring filmmakers?
There are plenty of stunt coordinators turned directors who would love to make a movie where you give them money to have guys kick and punch each other and they won't care too much about the geopolitics. And by the way, a lot of those movies are a lot of fun and have a lot of cool stuff in them. But you just got to know which type of director you're getting.
Yeah, it's such a crazy choice.
It's crazy that these guys are so uninterested in what movies are that they just they looked up Paul Schrader's IMDb star meter or something.
Yeah, that's entirely possible. Yep.
I mean, you show any of these guys Mishima and they, within 10 minutes, they're like, I don't want to watch this,
That's exactly right. Yeah.
And so, he then says, "This, I believe, will be the last film I ever make. If you want to take it from me, you can, but you will need to pull it from my dying fingers." And then they did. And
precisely what happened.
He goes into what he describes as a 10-week bender, basically. Calls it a waste of life. And he says, "Directors are all alpha beings. Your attitude is always, give me a chair, give me a whip, put me in the cage, and I'll tame this beast. Well, sometimes the lion wins. That's an enormous blow to your alpha ego."
Now, this is ridiculous stuff to be saying. And yet, I do find myself in the sort of unusual position of being on the side of Schrader when he's throwing one of these borderline tantrums. Because it does come across as the type of thing that would make me say I have committed a waste of life decision about what I've been doing for the last year.
Well, and so the experience of watching, so they take it away from him. They have it cut by, and everything is taken away. They have it cut. They have it sound mixed. They have it color timed. They have it, I think, even scored. All of it is finished by people who are trying to finish a movie rather than make something that has anything to say about anything, even a kind of genre-heavy political thriller film that touches on some issues while mostly being a vehicle for... I mean, it's not even really a vehicle for action, though. There's not a ton of action in it. Yeah.
So look, this is what I wanted to say, is that the fascinating thing to me is that, like I said, almost all the decisions that Schrader makes in his version, all the things you just mentioned, the color timing, the music, the editing, I think they are pretty much across the board improvements, enormous improvements. Almost shocking that he could even achieve this given the circumstances that we're going to get to in a second. But also, the original film is not just not artistic, not challenging, not unique in any way. It's not even good at being the type of thing that it wants to be, or the studio wanted it to be. That's the fascinating part to me. As you and I share a prurient interest, a nasty interest in this type of film, and it's not even a good one of these. It's boring.
It's not a good Gerard Butler film or whatever. Exactly. It's not a good film that's like John Travolta and Garrett Hedlund.
That's right. Yeah.
It's another one of those guys who it seems like they added extra consonants to his name to try to make him pop, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's not even a good one of those because it's a little too talky, too thinky, not enough. Like it
changes its mind too many times about the things that happen in it, which is always, I think, takes you out of it as a viewer of one of these slop films.
A lot of it is about like doctors' offices, you know?
Right.
But one of the things that's also...
extremely tall doctor features prominently, yes.
It's time to talk about the tall doctor. Okay, did you look up the tall doctor, Dr. Sanjar? No. Oh, I'm so glad to hear this because, Ian, I gotta tell you, Silas Carson, who plays the tall doctor, you are familiar with his work.
I am?
Yes, let me play you a selection that you may recognize from...
Holy shit.
This guy's probably most prominent role. You ready for this?
You know, our blockade is perfectly legal, and we'd be happy to receive ambassadors.
Oh my God.
He is Newt Gunray.
This is, of course, any fan of the prequel films recognize this.
Any fan of the prequel films, any fan of Orientalism. Any enemy of the evil Chinese toy manufacturers who ruined George Lucas's life a little bit.
That's exactly right.
The only problem remaining to him when he returned to filmmaking.
Yep.
Yeah, he played Newt Gunray. He played a number of characters in The Phantom Menace. He played Ki-Adi-Mundi, the Jedi on the Jedi Council, the guy with the tall head.
Of course.
He's in all three of the prequels as that guy.
Yep.
He plays Lot Dodd, which is a name that I recognize, but I couldn't tell you who it is. And he's
based
also
on the height of this man, I now understand that Ki-Adi-Mundi is one of those Halloween costumes where your head is actually in the top of the pink column, and the face is like in your chest. Cool.
Well, here's the thing: he's also like hot. This is a silver fox.
No, you're right. It's very distracting. I thought he was going to turn out to be like an enemy agent or something because he's so handsome.
He's a British actor whose mother is Indian, and so his CV is full of a lot of characters with South Asian names, doctors, things like this. However, I cannot blame anyone who decides to put this guy in their movie for 5 seconds, and you'd be like, "Who's this doctor?" So he plays Dr. Sanjar.
He sure does. Yeah.
Let's go through. How are we going to do the plot summary? Because it deviates.
I gave this some thought. I think we have to do the Dying of the Light version first because most of the decisions in Dark, for obvious production reasons, are cuts. Yes. So I think in order to discuss that, it makes more sense to do Dying of the Light first. So we're going to have to go a little bit granular. Yeah.
So let's walk through the film Dying of the Light as it was released. Let's see here. December 5th, 2014. You and I probably we're probably getting ready for finals. No, wait, I had graduated.
2014?
You were getting ready for finals.
Yeah, that's right.
2014. Yep. I knew my famous podcast girlfriend at this point. She and I were probably enjoying the Christmas season. Perhaps perhaps we were putting up decorations, putting up some baubles.
This doesn't seem likely to me. You and I are still living together.
Maybe we were putting them up at her place.
Okay.
Schmuck.
Fine. Story holds up. Okay, so the story of Dying of the Light begins in any viewer of this type of film recognizes this type of sequence.
Yep.
Introducing the character vis-a-vis, I guess you could connect it to quality films like Silence of the Lambs. We get something similar too. But
very Silence of the Lambs, yeah.
Yeah. We get an introduction to Evan Lake, like Jake said, the Nicolas Cage character, who is a decorated intelligence officer who is going to give a speech at Langley. And
I think it's actually it's like Camp Leahy or something. It's some kind of it's like a
you're
it's
right.
for
Actually,
it's,
have it Camp Peary, Virginia. Yeah.
It's for training guys. It's
Yep,
new
exactly.
it's new recruits, and he's like the old hand who's coming to give them the big speech about, why are you here?
Yes. And this comes intermixed with or immediately after a sequence in which he is being tortured in unnamed Middle Eastern location by unnamed young Middle Eastern man in, I would say, pretty extreme fashion. The type of thing that's saved for this genre of film. He's being hit in the face with a cricket bat, which, sorry to nitpick, but this is... You hit a guy in the face with a cricket bat once and he might die, so this doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah.
And I think it's worth mentioning because it falls into the category of fear-mongering propaganda type visuals that you could say, well, there was this real incidence of, if people recall our American Sniper episode, this guy applying drills to people's heads or children's heads or something. But the choice to include it up top really sets the tone of there's this type of people. We're not going to say that it's a whole type of people we don't like, but we're going to imply heavily that we all understand
it's one guy.
That there are these enemies that threaten our gates.
He's also it's crucially the first instance of torture we see in the film is brown-skinned Muslim man on white American torture.
Exactly.
Which
Yes.
sort of it sets us up so that any torture by an American is purely
exactly right.
eye for an eye.
Yep. And not even eye for an eye, because one is in the defense of democracy and freedom. So how could they even be equivalent, really?
Yeah, of course.
So he's giving a speech. He talks very clearly about...
He also notches his ear.
You're right. It's only relevant because it's very distracting.
Yeah. Well,
movie.
it's so that nobody else picks him up and tries to TNR him in the future.
Yeah, that's right.
They notch Nicolas Cage's ear.
Cat owners. That's something that happens once he gets sterilized. Yeah.
Yeah. They put a little tattoo on his belly. We've talked about the belly tattoo already, haven't we? Haven't we talked about this? Maybe it's on Patreon.
Yeah.
Yeah. They tattoo a kitten's belly when they get spayed or neutered so that they don't get re-spayed or neutered by
Exactly. If they ever escape and get picked up.
It's very cute. My cats have little tattoos.
And it's like neon green. Not a bad idea. So he goes to give this speech to these young CIA recruits, and he talks about, why are you here? Haven't you heard that the CIA is not reliable, not trustworthy, can't stand up to the White House, backstabbers? And then he says, I know why you're
watching porn. That's another thing.
He says
because I think the CIA...
Spying on phones, yeah.
The CIA probably, was investigating illegal pornography or something, maybe? Is that something that...
I don't know, but this is almost directly simultaneous with the Snowden whistleblower stuff. So I don't know if this was also part of what he's referencing.
Sure.
Anyway, but he says, I know why you're here. You heard the call to adventure, to mystique, about 9/11, duty, love of country.
He says,
and ultimately, yes, he does.
He gives us a characteristic Nick Cage, unusual pronunciation.
All of it is right, straight down the line. Yeah. And then he says, the reason you're here is you have values. We'll address this in a bit. Well, what's wrong with this from a ideological perspective?
It's incredible when watching the two of them, and we're not talking about Dark yet, but watching the two of them, it is a lot like, the two Exorcist films they're different films made from the same germ of an idea. These are two different films made from the same literal footage, but you can see how much an edit can directly sell or ironically undermine a single word like that.
Correct.
It's very fascinating to see. It's cool to watch.
Yeah, I'm gonna repeat what I said in the Dominion episode. For me, it was educational. It really reminded me of all that goes into those elements, and I would suggest it even being looked at in a class somewhere. I think it would be.
I mean, I think that's
eye-opening.
Maybe the only place it could legally be displayed.
Right. Yes. Yeah. So, like Jake is suggesting, most of the film, it sounds like you and I agree, present him not as a man in a room or a Travis Bickle style unstable guy, but rather more like the slightly unstable outsider who's the only one who really sees things the way they are and is going to lead.
Yeah, he's more like a Dirty
fight
Harry.
For the truth. Exactly.
I mean, he's not.
Put that in my notes.
Not exactly like Dirty Harry, but if we're comparing him, he's much further on the Dirty Harry side than the Travis Bickle side of guy types. Yeah.
Totally agree. So then we get the reveal that he has a memory illness that is specifically, I think, frontotemporal
dementia.
Degenerative dementia.
Because it's faster than Alzheimer's. It's worse. Yep. It's the kind of thing that
more
could,
dramatic.
Yes, cause problems within the time frame of a film. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. And at this point, he talks about the fact that he is still hunting down this guy, the guy who tortured him, again, this Mohammed Banir, and that he believes that he's still alive, despite the fact that he was rescued mid-torture by these commandos, and supposedly Banir died in the extraction. Nobody believes him. He's been riding a desk for many, many years, and now he's becoming increasingly unstable mentally and physically, so he tries to go talk to his CIA director buddy, can't get a field agent job back, can't get the resources to go find him. Seems like he's in trouble. And then his little buddy, who's also his boss, Anton Yelchin,
Milt,
his son/boss, that old character archetype.
I mean, it sounds like you haven't seen Nancy Meyers' The Intern.
That's great point. Yeah, that's
which is, I think I've said this on.
Boss, yeah.
I've probably said this on the show before. Pretty charming film, The Intern.
I believe
starring Travis Bickle himself.
That's right. Yep, grown up Travis Bickle making his way in the world.
Yeah, making his way back to the world. You know.
Yeah.
Milt is played by Anton Yelchin, doing a pretty good Jack Nicholson impression, I would say. Throughout the film, he's kind of doing this. You know,
I think Anton always has a little bit of that, but you're right. It's particularly pronounced here. I'm not sure totally what his reading is on the character.
It's incredible just to see these two men's faces next to each other, because Nick Cage's face is so long and just big generally.
Yep.
And Anton Yelchin's face is so Soviet and squunched. He's got like a little orb head, like the guy from Stalker.
He had a small head for a man, and I'm sorry for the way that he went. I'm very unfortunate.
Yeah.
This character is a character that old Evan Lake rescued in the midst of a classic intelligence agency fuck up, where they were going to hang him out to dry in the Cairo or the Baghdad or one of these offices in far-flung east country. Yeah,
threatening east country. And he says, you know, exactly. I never leave a man behind. And he went.
I believe what he said is, I just had to remind the CIA that we take care of our own.
We take care of our own. Yes. And this is contrapuntal to his refusal to take the world's greatest retirement / medical leave offer of all time. They basically say, come to the free CIA hospital where all your needs will be met, and you'll only be around guys that you know because you used to snipe Somalian kids together or whatever.
Yep. And
he says, fuck you. Did you get to that part?
Yeah. No, this is perfect. Okay. That's exactly right. So the CIA director catches wind, or has been tracking, he gets flagged, something happens where they figure out that he's having memory problems. They take him in, they say, we have this very tall, handsome doctor here who's going to help you, and we have this package that Jake just described. And he says, Nicolas Cage says, fuck you, you our Iran-Contra, your AIMS, your 9/11, your WMDs, your Afghanistan, your Iraq,
so far
your
up
Benghazi.
Obama's ass, all you can see is his shit.
Correct. Yeah, totally just classic trying to ride the line and be non-ideological. They've picked things that are sort of vaguely left and right to be signifiers for CIA or just deep state failures, but it just comes out as mumbo jumbo.
Right. It's like it's failing. I guess it's the biggest crime is like ineffectiveness rather than anything with values, as he says.
Well, again, he does the left and right sort of check to make sure everybody's happy, where he says, you're selling this country to weapons makers, the surveillance industry, all while we get weaker, which is the kind of like, okay.
Yeah, like the military industrial complex is somehow weakening the United States. I guess
we still want a strong military. We should still be more aggressive internationally and be the freedom police, etc. So in that way, satisfying the fascistic goals of the right in world domination, but also saying we're selling out to big corporations that are controlling our government. Or something.
Which honestly, I think is kind of, I don't know that I know any like intelligence people. I'm sure some friend's dad from 5th grade was actually Edward Snowden's cubicle mate or whatever. Growing up in Northern Virginia, but my understanding of these guys, especially because this is like the deep state, right? This is the consistent, unelected, career like government employees who they've been there through every kind of administration. Their goals are the same.
Yeah, like I said in the early speech, he says that the CIA has failed to stand up to elected officials, but also that they've failed elected officials. So yes,
yeah. I was thumbing through. It's called The Devil's Chessboard. Is that what that book's called?
Yep.
And I learned, thanks to Zoomer Josh, friend of the show, past and future guest, Zoomer Josh, that the CIA has a section on its website where they review books that are about the CIA, and they have a review of The Devil's Chessboard that basically says a lot of it's based on speculation.
Yeah, really funny.
You're the fucking CIA. You could have given them more information if you didn't want them to speculate, but I suspect that you did not. Anyway,
yes.
So yeah, he's got a pretty incoherent issue with the CIA that I would venture to guess is probably fairly realistic to what at least a number of people working there would say.
I agree.
Yeah. He also says something about like, I'm sorry, is it the policy of this agency or this government to let people get away with kidnapping and bombing people?
He's talking about Mohammed Banir again, this imaginary guy, which they pick a very strange amount of evil doing. They say he's responsible for like 17 kidnappings, several deaths, and the bombing of a bus where some kids died.
Well, I think it's strange for the Redbox version of this movie.
Yeah.
It's not strange for the
Paul Schrader
filmmaker made this version of the movie, but it certainly doesn't read as it doesn't read as like you would just say this guy blew up an embassy and killed 270 people or something like that.
Exactly. Well, you're right. This is why it makes more sense for Dark than it does for Dying of the Lights.
Yeah.
So
he basically fumbles the bag and gets fired. Yeah. There's a weird scene where he balances a dictionary on the back of his hand that seems like maybe a Schrader, or maybe like a Cage ad lib.
It does. He does it weirdly well, though, so I couldn't totally object to it. His hand is very steady.
It is. Did you talk about the courier guy in Romania? Have we gotten to Romania yet?
No, this is what we're waiting for.
Okay, because I think some of that there's some cross-cutting here. Because the reason that Milt gets involved.
Correct. We haven't talked about him being involved at all. We haven't set any of this up.
You just said Milt came in. You just introduced Milt. Okay, so I'm in Romania. I've decided I'm doing Romanian plot summary.
Great.
So, meanwhile in Romania, there's two Romanian intelligence guys, SRI, is that what it's called?
Yeah. Yep.
Which is was confusing to me because I used to work at a recording studio.
Okay.
No, it's Studio SIR, Studio Instrument Rentals, was a company that I was deeply affiliated with, or deeply familiar with, I should say. SRI, these guys are watching some dude, and they are very confident in saying, hey, this guy doesn't look Nigerian. And the other guy says, no, he looks Kenyan. So I guess, look, I'll say I would want my intelligence guys to be able to guess if someone is from East or West Africa, I suppose.
Yeah, I suppose that too. And also there's some suggestion that they have a file on this guy. So I think part of it is a joke about like he has a Nigerian passport, but he's clearly Kenyan.
Got it. Okay, so he's been like ferrying some very specific pharmaceuticals, and they chase this guy. Or maybe, no, he doesn't have the pharmaceutical. He just has the flash drive, right?
He has a flash drive.
They're chasing this guy who has a flash drive. There's a car chase. The guy throws the flash drive off of the Romania bridge, and then he climbs up on the railing and jumps himself.
Yep.
They have they are able to recover the flash drive. Interestingly, there's a lot more described on the flash drive in Dying of the Light than in Dark. He elides a number of and I'm sure this is because this is only a couple years after the Bin Laden raid, which, just to remind everybody, was called Operation Neptune Spear, which fucking sucks. What a bunch of dorks. Neptune famously didn't have a spear. He had a trident. Mm-hmm. I know. I like that I said didn't, as if he like once
it's an
existed.
Guy, historical figure.
But, famously they found all kinds of silly stuff on his computer, which there's like a number of Tom and Jerry episodes that are now in the public record because the CIA had to upload them to CIAarchive.com.
Yep.
Because they were on his computer. But I just wanted to read really quickly some of the fun stuff, which is the cache also included typical internet browsing and pirated content, including home videos, cat videos, clip art, a video called, in all caps, horse_dance, wildlife documentaries, a copy of Charlie Bit My Finger.
Yeah.
Now, I do want to know if mainly Arabic speakers, do they also think that the little boy having a British accent is funny like you and I do?
I think probably, yeah.
Probably.
He just kind of talks funny.
He does. I mean, he talks very seriously about and the animated films Ice Age, Dawn of the Dinosaurs, and Ants.
Whoa.
Ants with a Z.
Okay.
Episodes of Jackie Chan Adventures. Remember that show?
I did not know. Oh, yeah. I was an avid watcher. I didn't know about this.
I knew you would be. Tom and Jerry.
Which of the talismans do you think he was most interested in acquiring?
Do you think the guys in the compound were like, hey, Jackie doesn't do the voice of the cartoon. It's just, he just shows up for the live action stuff at the end.
Yeah. Of course.
Case Closed, which is I think Detective Conan. It's like another name for Detective Conan.
But that's how when it aired on Toonami, I believe that's what it was called.
Jesus. Yeah. Copies of the video games Final Fantasy VII, Devil May Cry, Counter-Strike, they're probably good at that one, Half-Life, and Resident Evil 2.
Can't express too strongly what an affinity
well,
the same media.
Then some fucking they also had Morgan Spurlock's Where in the World is Osama bin Laden documentary in like a collection of basically every Western documentary about bin Laden, probably, so they could watch them and laugh.
Yeah.
And then some fucking wet blanket at Wikipedia just has to point out, however, the files may have come from other residents of the compound, of which there were believed to be 20.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And some of the computers were purchased as used products that they may have already been there. There was also porno on there. So that's funny. I'm sure Schrader thought about this. This is the kind of thing he would make a Facebook post about.
This is correct. Yeah.
And so on this flash drive, in the Dying of the Light version, they explain that there is porn, Islamic sermons, Angry Birds.
Yep.
Which I checked, by this point had been released for Windows, but it's interesting to put Angry Birds on a flash drive.
You're right.
And then also like the records of a very specific drug used to treat, as the film calls it, Mediterranean anemia or thalassemia, which is a sort of specific regionally genetically linked form of anemia. So it's kind of rare disease that's easy to track people down. I assume this is also inspired by the fact that bin Laden was on dialysis.
Yes, I believe so.
The idea of kind of a terrorist, a once sort of virile and frightening man who is now old and
cut out by this shared mortality.
Yes, weakened. And so anyway,
as a minor point, just before you continue, I think this is among several characters that it makes sense for Dark, not for Dying in the Light. He's portrayed in his very brief appearance on screen in kind of a sympathetic fashion. Maybe it's just a casting choice. But the look on his face before he kills himself, you feel bad for
that guy. Yeah, no, I think that guy is, I mean, it might just be good casting. Maybe Schrader just picks people who are going to be good. Yeah, no, you feel for this guy. He also, we don't really know, we don't know what's going on, so we don't really know whether we're supposed to dislike this guy. And he kills himself, I think, in a very desperate way. It's not like he blows himself up or anything. He jumps off a bridge, which is one of the more, I don't know, kind of
humbling,
sympathetic ways to kill yourself. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this sets off some kind of watch, some keyword watch or whatever you call it, that Milt has set up for a specific medication. And so that's how he is brought into the fray, because he was on the lookout for anyone receiving a particular type of drug used to treat this disease that Banir is believed to have.
That's exactly right. So we cut back to the United States. Evan is lost in his post-diagnosis, post-firing. No chance I'm ever going to complete my life's goal of finding this guy. And also this is where the film gets muddied a little bit because it slips into sort of more traditional aging drama type of stuff where you're just watching this guy. It reminded me a little bit of the beginning of The Mule, where you're just watching this old man drink in his house by himself because he has no living family members or people that care about him, things like that.
He's getting ready to kill himself, and instead of turning around the picture of his mother or his wife or something, he turns around a picture of him shaking hands with Bill Clinton.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
As it's explained, he doesn't have any family. The company was his family to an extent, although it's unclear if he had any friends in the agency at all in the Dying of the Light version.
Yes.
So he's got nobody, he's got nothing left to live for. He about to do it when Milt shows up, right?
Milt shows up. First, they meet at a Ruby Tuesdays. There's a very strange exchange.
Yeah. So this is one of the first instances we see of Evan's memory loss, Evan's dementia getting to him.
We've already seen some emotional dysregulation, which they've clarified very obviously in the film.
They describe it.
Exactly, yeah.
But he says, I'm at Diamond Tuesdays.
Yeah.
Which, as my girlfriend pointed out, because before we watched Dark, she was saying it's really weird how they don't seem to be using the dementia for any real kind of situational irony.
They are using it. It's not that it doesn't have a presence in the film. They just keep bringing it up, basically. And
it seems like the obvious execution of the premise of a CIA agent with dementia kind of tries to tie up loose ends is there should be things that are happening that we're not sure if they're really happening. That seems like one of the number one things that should happen in the movie. Yep. And so this is one of the first inklings we get. But Diamond Tuesdays to me is so close to Ruby Tuesdays that it could just be like a guy who doesn't give a shit what the restaurant is called, you know?
Or in typical film fashion, just kind of like a legally dissimilar... Yeah. Yes.
Burger Queen.
It takes a second. Yeah. Exactly. But then he clarifies because Milt says, you're at Ruby Tuesdays? And he says, yeah, I'm at Ruby Tuesdays.
And so my first question was, because this is shot in Romania, this whole film, a lot of highways that are conspicuously not American-style highways. They don't look like Northern Virginia highways, for example, which I've traveled on a fair bit. And I'm thinking, it's so funny that Paul Schrader had to send somebody out to look for the restaurant in Bucharest that looked closest to, like, that had the least steps to make it look like a Ruby Tuesday.
Yeah, it doesn't look that much like a Ruby Tuesday.
No, I mean, it has the kind of, like, Tiffany lamp look that I think Ruby Tuesdays and Pizza Hut and, like, Applebee's all share. There's a chain restaurant lamp look. But then I did learn, as of 2011, there were in operation 2 franchise-owned Ruby Tuesday locations in Romania.
Oh,
so it's entirely possible that the Romanian franchisee, could not be bothered to make this look at all appealing as a place to eat. Didn't put any tchotchkes up on the wall. I haven't been to Ruby Tuesday, but I assume I've been to the restaurants I've been to Bannigan's and TGI Fridays and stuff. Like,
yes, yep.
There's shit on the walls, right? It's a shit on the walls place.
They all look extremely similar to me. I don't really know the distinguishing features. Yes, but that's why it looks kind of like halfway between a Ruby Tuesdays and like a kind of an Irish pub or something. Sure. I don't know. Before
anyone jumps up our ass, by the way, it's called Ruby Tuesday, but colloquially, I've never heard anyone call it that, and so we said Ruby Tuesdays a bunch of times. I'm sorry.
Right.
And we know Paul was a big Rolling Stones guy as a younger man. So
That's true. I wonder could be thinking about the song.
Yeah, he probably thought it was funny. So they meet up, and he's kind of hiding it from Milt that anything has gone wrong.
Yeah, I want to point out here, the script is frequently, dialogue-wise, quite bad. And I will, just as another tally mark in Schrader's credits, in Dark, somehow it didn't grind nearly as much for me. I don't know if sometimes it felt like the editing choice, because he turns them into kind of like throwaway lines instead of just making you sit with them.
In the Dying of the Light version, there is only the script and the movement of the actors on screen. There's nothing else going on.
Yes.
And so it's basically like, it's like if a filmed play had bad dialogue. There's nothing else, right? You know?
Yeah, and we get such lines as, later that same day, they're at Evan's apartment and Milt's revealing all this information about
before that, can I say a line that bumped for me at this moment?
Okay. Yeah, sure.
What happens when you go to a restaurant and the server comes up to you and you say, get him something to eat?
Yeah.
They don't just leave, dude. They'd be like, do you want, our
today's special?
Yeah, or like our cheeseburger is very popular, or should I just bring you some fries?
Yeah, we talked about this with the Canians, where not every film has to be about realism, nor does it even have to be about the sort of representational realism that most films fall into, where it's not really like actually the way people speak, but it's the shared way of speaking that most people in films speak.
Right, the way people in movies don't say bye on the phone or whatever. Like, exactly. We all get it. But there's the plot hole nitpicker guys who, in Prometheus, why don't they run to the left or right kind of guys or whatever.
Yeah.
But then when so much of the film is odd in this way, the oddnesses pile up and you can't ignore them. So
and the only thing that really clears that is when they are driving towards a separate goal. If they are distinctly expressionistic, they're distinctly lyrical, whatever it is.
David Lynch or whatever, yeah.
Exactly. And so you're right. The lines that bumped for me, like an hour later, they're at his apartment. And he, like you said, Evan seems to be hiding his illness because the doctor comes, et cetera, et cetera. And Milt says to him, this goes back to Ruby Tuesdays. They were Ruby Tuesdays like an hour ago. This goes back to Ruby Tuesdays. And he says, I'm risking my job here, but you've got another program running, something you won't tell me about. You got to be straight. You owe me that much.
Yeah.
It's just bad writing. It's too many metaphors. It's too much saying of exactly what you want the character to do.
And it doesn't read as like guys who would call themselves operators speaking in like a clipped way that they think is cool. It's also not clear that it's that there's a moment here also where they're planning. So they're going to put together a trip to Romania.
Yeah.
It's a sort of fact-finding thing. Dr. Sanjar, to his credit, shows up at the door and he's like, hey, I didn't like how we left it. Like he's a
good doctor.
He's a good doctor. He's also an expert. He knows that overreaction is like one of the symptoms of this.
He really takes it in stride. He says, "Yes, I understand that you felt frustrated," or something like this.
Yeah, I would like to talk. I would like to continue. Yeah. He's having his own, basically his own like Father Toller experience. From First Reformed, but they're putting together, one last ride. They're gonna go over to Romania and see what they can find out. And Yelchin says, Milt says, "Do you have multiple ID?" Which that could sound like a thing, like a way
this
that
kind of agent speak. Yeah.
But then Nick Cage responds, "I have old passport." It just sounds like a Polish joke or something.
I wrote down both of these lines.
I have old passport.
It's bizarre. It's totally bizarre. Yeah.
Hey, bonus 2 question. Do you have old passport? Because I
have multiple ID, baby. I
got old passport because I renewed mine and they sent old passport back. I was so excited to see it again with all my little stamps.
That's right. All right. I have so much that I want us to talk about. I think you do too. So we'll have to speed up a tiny bit.
Let's speed through.
But
they go to Romania.
There's some weird stuff. Yeah. They go to Romania. They're following guys. Anton Yelchin chases a guy down, slits his throat.
This is another point in
the film
at the
where
Christmas market.
He does. And he's already defeated this guy, which... It made me wonder, in a different film, in like a Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy or something, this is the moment where you say, is this guy, is he covering his tracks or something?
Yeah.
Or in the CIA critique film, is this pointing out their brutality and the measures they take to do stuff?
We don't really get any, the film has no opinion on this.
Never returns to it. Neither does Dark. This is one of the moments in Dark that still bumped for me, as you say.
Sure, I could see that. So they meet up with an old flame played by Irene Jacob or Irene, I don't know. From, you know her from The Double Life of Veronique. You know her from The OA season 2. You know her from all kinds of stuff.
I love a Kieślowski. It's very confusing to see her here. It was strange. It was disconcerting.
What to me was very impressive Romanian. I have no idea if it sounds ridiculous to a real Romanian speaker. I tried to figure out if she was half Romanian or something. Can't tell. She's just a Swiss lady, so maybe people from Switzerland, I imagine, can just pick up languages real easy.
Sure.
They're also very punctual, is my understanding. So
the memory, the dementia is getting worse.
The dementia is getting worse.
Little moment outside. Kind of a nice sequence, I thought, where they're sitting in front of a hotel outside.
Cage's most affecting moment in the film, where he's making this face, just like an I'm lost face, a real scared
I'm
face.
trying to, and not just I'm lost, but I'm trying to fight my way back to who I am.
It's very moving, and it's very familiar from seeing great grandparents or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah, just nicely done and visually pretty, because they're in front of this grand hotel. It's all lit up in
it's the
wintry Romanian
the hotel
park.
From Grand Hotel. That's where they shot it. I don't know. It's probably like a Sheraton. The Sheraton Bucharest.
Yep.
And I mentioned this to you, but this, we'll get to it as soon as we finish the plot summary, but the making of Dark occurs during the editing of First Reformed, and so we both watched Alex Ross Perry's short documentary, Paul Schrader Man in a Room, in which it becomes clear that off camera, Schrader and ARP have talked about Christian Mungiu's film 4 months, 3 weeks, 2 days.
Powerful, brutal film about abortion and women's rights.
By one of the leading international faces of Romanian cinema.
Yes.
But apparently they've talked about this film so much that Schrader says, I was thinking like in 432. And then, because they haven't mentioned it before this, but
it has not come up.
Perry then cuts to a clip of that film with the full title on the screen, just so we know what the fuck he's talking about. But it's funny because I can't imagine the guys who are taking the job going to Bulgaria to shoot. Steven Seagal is the kick fucker.
Yeah.
I don't think those guys are up on like the leading lights of Bulgarian cinema the way that Paul
Couldn't
Schrader
use it as a frame of reference. It's
Paul
true.
Schrader
That
probably
might be
like
difficult.
looked up Radu Juda while he was there making this movie.
Yep.
Anyway, interesting. So
but in fairness, I want to talk about, there's an article written by a cinematographer, Gabriel Kosuth. I don't know how it's pronounced. He's Romanian. He may be up on 432.
He may be. This article, it's we'll get to it in a second, but very interesting. A lot of respect for this guy.
Yeah, me too.
For reasons that may surprise you. So, well, not really. Just like,
okay.
Yeah, you'll anyway. So, then they figure out that possible Benir, as they refer to him, in one of the maybe like one of the only parts of the film that feels at least like researched, like spy talk, where they're referring to, okay, so possible Benir has been hiding here because, like, anyway, they figure out that he's in Kenya. He's in Mombasa.
He's in Mombasa, the asshole of East Africa, they call it.
Go ahead, everyone listening, if you're not familiar, and Google Mombasa, and you will see images that could be of Maui, Miami Beach, fucking, like Cancun. This is like a beautiful beach resort city. I mean, it's also a large city, but like, it's not the asshole. It looks nice. There's parts of it that people go to enjoy the beautiful city of Mombasa,
And the fascinating thing is that the article we just referenced about the cinematographer, I read it between watching Dying of the Light and Dark, and it confused me because he talks about Schrader wanting to shoot or wanting to have these colors that really signified the places that they were in. And it sounded kind of like the film I had just watched, which was a very boringly colored. I mean, the distinguishing features are exactly what you've seen in all these movies. The United States is shot in mostly realistic colors. Looks kind of nice. Yeah. Eastern Europe is shot in the Jason Bourne Eastern Europe blues. Yeah. And Africa is shot in the poor country.
The famous piss yellow Call to Prayer.
Yep.
And they do play the Call to Prayer when they go to Kenya, Kenya is not Syria.
There's
a lot of
there's Muslims and there's Christians and there's
Kenyan music. Like there's other sounds that are there.
Right.
And of course they never actually go to Kenya, and you can tell this because we get like sort of different quality B-roll images of Mombasa. And then whenever anyone's in a car going through Mombasa, it looks like, speaking of Newt Gunray, it looks like Star Tours out the window.
Totally crazy rear projection. Some of the strangest modern rear projection that I've ever seen. It goes back to like Notorious era stuff, but it's in color. So
it's not that strange for a Redbox movie. Like
I guess maybe
sort of par for the course.
I don't know. It seems so easy to shoot an actual scene and then just rear project it digitally now that I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. But we've totally skipped Dr. Julian Cornell. There's a Romanian doctor who Lake is going to impersonate in order to go try to meet with Benir and pretend to be his doctor so he can get up close to him to kill him. And he puts on there's a little Mission Impossible like makeup scene with the gayest man in all of Romania.
Correct. I didn't love this. Very strange. And on top of that, you reminded me that we skipped over. There's a moment early on where I think it's the Milt character says, like, well, if this guy's this sick, why don't we just leave him? Like, why even go hunt him down? And
right. Yes.
It plants a little seed, which, again, I don't think ever germinates in the Dying of the Light version, but I think is critical in the Dark version. So
very much so. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's pretending to be this Romanian doctor. He's brought to Benir's secret hideouts where he's been for like a decade or 20 years because Lake pulled a tricky move where he besmirched his name and made it seem like he was a double agent for a Western intelligence agency. So he couldn't even be involved in continued terrorism. So it takes away one of the driving factors of hunting down a guy. Right. Because it really makes it seem like he hasn't been up to that much in the last 20 years. This is a guy,
and I think this element of Schrader's script it survives even the brutalizing by
I agree.
These guys.
I agree.
Where like you see a physically enfeebled man, and like not every filmmaker is writing a moment where they're like former terrorist character is struggling to get out of his chair so that he can kneel to pray, and like very visibly sort of with pathos having difficulty moving around. Like there's humanity to this guy. He's also
absolutely.
I would like to shout out Alexander Karim, who as soon as I saw this guy, I assumed he must be in a million things because he's great.
He is really great.
He's in a million Swedish things. Swedish things. He is in Zero Dark 30. You probably remember his turn as detainee on Monitor.
Of course.
He is in a shitload of stuff in Sweden. He is a Swedish actor. His parents were refugees from Uganda who moved to Uppsala. And so he grew up there. He has, I think, two brothers who are both like in the film industry, acting and directing stuff. And he's been in a number of films with Alexander Skarsgård in Sweden.
Another acting family. Whole family's over there, yeah.
And specifically, he is in, and this is where that Patreon punishment comes in. He's in 10 of the 20 Johan Falk TV films.
Whoa.
There are 20 films. I mean, it's one of those, it's like Columbo, I guess, where it's each episode is 90 minutes long or whatever. This guy's in 10 movies, basically. So we're going to cover all of them on Patreon. Not just the 10, all 20.
I'm not even going to veto this. Sounds like a pleasant time. I'm on board.
Pretty cool.
Let's do at least one. Let's do.
There's just, exactly. And it's going to be about like one Swedish police officer's gun fired once and then his wife left him, you know.
Right.
Funny. So, but this guy's great.
He's really great.
And these sequences, you know, he's just like, this is a sad situation. This is as bad as being hunted down by the CIA, basically. He's a shell. Yeah,
I mean, in that IndieWire interview, or the IndieWire article, they reference Schrader being inspired or thinking about Kurosawa's Ikiru. This is the type of pathos you're talking about. Just watching a guy like struggle to move, watching a guy thinking about how is he going to use the remaining time of his life. And we do, of course, get a classic sort of dual comparison here in the form of this man and the aging CIA agent who we've also been following. They've ended up in similar circumstances.
And so we get this confrontation.
Yeah.
Where, you know, he's preparing
most interesting part of the film for me.
Yeah,
until
by far.
Suddenly it was totally betrayed by what happens after.
Yeah, it's like adaptation. It's like another Nick Cage movie, but in that film it's a sort of a meta commentary on the fact that this thing needs an action finale,
a shootout conclusion.
And in this one they went to fucking Australia to do it. Like it's not like it was an afterthought or something.
Nope. So yeah, they're having a little conversation where he reveals himself to be Lake and he reminds Bannier of their past, and they have a conversation about possibly losing faith in these institutions and the effect that they had on each other's lives. He realizes that Lake is also sick like him. What else do they talk about?
Yeah, I mean, he says like he's fallen out of faith with jihadism, basically. It says like the only future for Islam is Marxism. Like this is some Paul Schrader shit. This is interesting. He's talking about Sayyid Qutb, who is sort of the founder of like Wahhabism.
No. He's the founder of Salaf. I mean, he has a huge influence on Salafist jihadi ideas, in particular the Muslim Brotherhood.
Right. He's like one of the founders of the Muslim Brotherhood, and famously went to, this guy comes up in Lawrence Wright's The Looming Tower, the book about Al-Qaeda that I read that says that the U.S. is not a colonial empire. Anyway.
Great book, sounds like.
Yeah. Well, it's got some interesting stuff in it, but it talks about Sayyid Qutb famously went to Greeley, Colorado. It's at Colorado State. To a university in Colorado, and was basically just like disgusted the entire time he was there, and had some very cool things to say that I sent to you. For example, he also there was basically one Western guy that he ever spoke highly of, Sayyid Qutb.
Talking about Alexis Carrel?
Yeah, who was a French eugenicist. Who was like a eugenicist who predated the Nazis and like gave them some ideas, one of those kind of guys. Yep. And he, of course, famously, the Nazis, the French, once, Vichy France was over, they went ahead and changed the name of the medical institution named after this guy in 1996. They took the eugenicist name.
Wait that long.
Name off of it. Yeah. Sorry. Where is the... Here it is. So Kutub noted, this is from his book on America. He says, "The American girl is well acquainted with her body's seductive capacity. She knows it lies in the face and in expressive eyes and thirsty lips. She knows seductiveness lies in the round breasts, the full buttocks, and in the shapely thighs, sleek legs, and she knows all this and does not hide it." This is like a parody of a puritanical preacher talking about the evils of sexuality. He also says, "The American is primitive in his artistic taste, both in what he enjoys as art and in his own artistic works. Jazz music is his music of choice. That is that music that the Negroes invented to satisfy their primitive inclinations, as well as their desire to be noisy on the one hand and to excite bestial tendencies on the other." So, well, we weren't like cool with jihad that much before, but like this is turning me off of it even further.
It's true. This is making me basically not like it at all.
Further from jihadism than I've ever been somehow.
But actually, I want to complicate this quite a bit because Sayyid Qutb is a fascinating figure, not a theologian. He's like a philosopher / literary critic.
He was a poet as well, right?
Many years. Yeah, he was a poet. He was a novelist. He was one of the guys who helped Naguib Mahfouz's novels become really popular. Basically the most famous Egyptian writer of the modern era. And he comes to all this stuff out of like a real hatred of modernity. That part of it he gets from, like you're saying, European, both left and right wing writers at the time. He read like Frankfurt School stuff. He read D'Annunzio. He was reading all these guys who were talking about like the denigration of the spirit by, you mentioned Benjamin, like by the machine, the elevation of the machine above the soul. And obviously his version of this is focused on the rise of Egypt or the rise of Ummah, of like the, Islamist community. But he's a fascinating figure because, first of all, a lot of his writing is just well written, interesting. I read portions of this book by John Calvert, Sayyid Qutb and the Origins of Radical Islamism, and also listened to this podcast, very unusual podcast called Conflicted, where an ex-jihadist and a white British Catholic monk talk about Middle Eastern conflict stuff. And very hard. They're both interesting. They're both like exactly as liberal as California parents are. So it's sort of strangely familiar. Yeah. And the monk guy is kind of, to stereotype a little bit, like California mom liberal, a little bit more socially left, a little bit more open to things. And the other guy's kind of like a technocrat-y, like, well, modernity does offer. I mean, this is a guy who was in Al-Qaeda, participated in Bosnian massacres of like women and children, and then became an MI6 agent. So very odd pairing. But
wow,
this is all to say that Sayyid Qutb, I think it's fascinating that Schrader would try to connect him to Marx. He did not like Marx. He talked about it as like a failed ideology that was indicative of like Eastern thought not offering. He meant Eastern, like Russian, like Eastern Bloc thought.
Yeah.
And then he also was talking about like democracy in the West is similarly infertile. And so to him, these are both failed projects. Obviously,
you gotta be a whole other level of racist to have like specific problems with the Slavic peoples,
right?
Sure, that is an advanced form.
It is very advanced. Yeah.
So when like Wired magazine does like 11 levels of the piano or whatever, you get like your 11 levels of racism, and around like 7 or 8 is when you have a problem with specifically like Slavic Russians,
Poles,
and like
right? Like the Estonian thought process or something.
The Thracian mind. Yeah. I was watching a video on the history of Romania, and it was all those guys who I couldn't keep straight in like Roman history classes. All of those guys were in Romania. It was like the Dacians and the Thracians like fighting over it, and like some other guys I hadn't heard of. Yeah, crazy.
It's a challenge to be this racist, and we got to give it up to him. I mean, I am going to give up in terms of philosophy, in terms of thinking. This guy's arguments to me fall into what the category of what is called like valid thinking, arguments that have validity, which is the idea that based on the premises, your conclusion follows from those premises successfully. Okay. So I'm going to say that based on the premise of the modern world is denigrated by basically like capitalist production and in emphasis on materialism, something
following
I think,
so far.
Right. We're interested in this. And that's the way to solve this is a focus on moral development and something that is inclusive of like poor Egyptian farmers. Also interesting.
Okay. Yep.
But then he adds a premise that the only way to do this is through Islam and jihad, specifically spreading this thought process basically at almost any cost.
I'm still following, actually.
Almost at any cost, yeah. Although he does object to like violence against civilians and innocents. But to him, of course, this all adds up to saying the American westernizing project, the type of stuff that ruined Egypt, the type of stuff that made them a British colonial subject for the exact time he was born, the type of stuff that basically transitioned Egypt from being a British colonial subject to being a U.S. colonial subject. People want to look up Project Fuckface, classic CIA naming coming back to us. Yeah.
What happened to that when it was time for Neptune's Sphere? I mean,
I was saving it. Yeah.
No, I mean, like when, I'm talking about in 2011 when they were planning. Yeah. Not that I would suspect that they didn't call stuff that was happening in like France Project Fuckface, but
you know what, I take it back. It's not it's Project Fat Fucker. I just remembered.
Sorry. Project Fuckface was like was in Peru.
That's right. Genuinely,
that fucking Paddington, that little fuckface.
I hated that guy. Yeah, this was the CIA's project. So King Farouk of Egypt, he was being shitty, and basically there was all these like revolutionary
like
feelings.
A full-figured man?
He was a full-figured man.
That's where that comes from.
Dine, excessively. Yes,
classic king behavior, I think, to overindulge at the expense of your subjects. Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly right. But it's more frustrating because I thought he was going to be like the hope of Egypt after his similarly failed father. But anyway, the CIA tried to convince him, hey, you should like do some reforms to basically let off some of this building steam valve pressure that's going to destroy your whole country and obviously destroy our colonial interests in this place. And he said, I'm not going to do that. So they said, okay, we're going to switch gears. We're going to coup you, and we're going to set up Nasser to make sure that they are in a position where they can't be couped, and we're going to just be absolutely locked down here for the future.
I cannot believe that I'm hearing this. This doesn't sound like anything I've heard of the CIA doing.
And from guys like Alan Dulles, like these are old friends, trustworthy friends. Yes. Yeah. So they do this, and this is also like a practice round for Operation Ajax, which they're going to run in Iran in a few years. So anyway, this is the stuff that Qutb is mad at. And it's hard to say, am I mad at this guy who is mad at European colonialism? Not necessarily, until he does the classic fascist move of saying, what do we have to do? We have to return. We have to find the spirit. We have to find guess what? The values that defined this country.
Very interesting.
Yes, very interesting to me as well.
So, very quickly.
Yeah.
In the Dying of the Light version, Lake tries to kill him. It doesn't work.
Yep.
He leaves. There's like a chase. There's a firefight.
Well, it's not just that it doesn't work. He decides not to. I mean, he says,
they leave. He says like,
yeah, it's very powerful. He says like, I hate you, but also there's no reason for me to kill you. And he walks away. So
they part as kind of, he says like ma'asalama, which is like with peace. Yep. Like they bury the hatchet. Yeah. And then this was all a dirty trick by those untrustworthy non-white
this was so
people.
Great. For the brief moment that I respected this movie.
And then there's like a dumb shootout at a pool at a hotel.
Anton Yelchin gets shot in the arm.
It does kind of give away the lie that Mombasa is the asshole of East Africa.
It's a tropical looking hotel. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, it's not, I don't think it's mainly being used by Mombasans, third and fourth generation Mombasans, but it doesn't look like an asshole, No. Yeah, there's a dumb fucking firefight, and he goes back in, and then he stabs him with his belt blade.
And sticks his finger in his eye. It totally undermines the entire sequence from before.
It is a kind of an impressive prosthetic, but I don't know where.
I agree with that.
Yeah,
the gore stuff, unfortunately, had to give a thumbs up to. Yeah, it's not in keeping with the tone of the movie. But
and then he just has like a fucking Lawrence of Arabia ending, except it's at the end. So he has a maybe frontotemporal dementia infused car accident, but also people just die in car accidents. Like it's not even that related to his.
It seems like it's a Chekhov's gun setup thing though, because there's a police officer who pulls him over earlier in the
other guy. He's in Star
Trek. Anton? Oh,
Star Trek. He played Chekhov.
That's true. Yep, you're right.
He is also, look, I don't want to speak ill of the dead, and he didn't pick the costume, presumably. What he is wearing when they're in Kenya is the most fucked up polo shirt I have ever seen in my life.
That actually does seem true to CIA agents abroad, probably.
And
so I admire that bit of costuming.
There is a weird bit of handgun price negotiation in Dying of the Light that feels like a Taxi Driver
I think
reference
that's right.
that it does not make it into Dark. We should talk about Dark now.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Just some final things just in terms of locking down the Dirty Harry part. This is all justification, basically saying, I was right. We needed to kill this guy. He's a bad guy. We repeat the speech from the beginning. Belt. Exactly. We repeat the speech from the beginning of the film, emphasizing...
locking down the Dirty Harry part. That's why you
I see. Yeah. Yep. All right. So this is like you're saying, this is undermining any undermining that the film has done of this guy, of his belief system, of the lines he says, like they jump straight from tom-toms to cell phones in Africa. They're all sorts of stuff.
Wireless crazy over there, I think is what he says. Which also, that sounds like in a World War II movie where they say, like, I'm going to try to get him on the wireless.
It does.
But he's also saying something extremely racist about East Africans.
Yeah.
There's a great, I wish I had looked her up. I wish I had looked her name up. There's a woman on like TikTok and stuff who lives in Africa who will do like the format of the video is like, people always ask me like, how do I, and she has a beautiful mellifluous accent. She says, how do I charge my phone in Africa? Well, every day we have to bring a bamboo leaf to the rhinoceros until he is our friend enough that we can put the phone between his horns. But conspicuously behind her is just a plug on the wall with her phone plugged into it.
Really
and so her whole
good.
gambit is like, we do everything the fucking same way you do because we have like light switches here.
And Schrader did write this stuff, presumably, unless they were ad-libbing these lines. And he did write the stuff where Bonnier is talking about social justice and Marx being the future of how we convince people to get on board with Islamism. So,
but at the same time, I do think, we get on the one hand a totally reactionary to the point of dementia CIA guy who can only say we used to do things better, we've lost our way, we have to just do things the same way we did before. And Bonnier's whole thing is like thinking about how to progress, how to get better, to iterate, how to try something new.
Yep.
Something happened to your cat's eye. Dark. Okay, so this happens.
How was this film made?
Schrader is kicked off of the film. They get some fucking who knows what to work on it, to just put it out.
Yeah.
You may recall, listeners, that Schrader was made to sign a non-disparagement clause, as were all the other principals of the film. They were not allowed to say anything about the version that came out, although, later this IndieWire article will print what were private emails, so it's gets around that a little bit. But Cage was basically saying, like, I'm an A-list actor doing A-list work, and they're putting me in these B-list context because of something I did 20 years ago. Anton Yelchin says something about the film having like the rhetoric of a Dairy Queen employee or something, which like let's leave them out of this. But, But they all take, along with Nick Refn, they have their non-disparagement clause printed on T-shirts, and they take photos of themselves wearing the T-shirts, basically saying, like, I can't say anything about this film except that I am not allowed to say anything about this film. Like, I'm obviously there is a dispute here.
Not Gabriel Cosset, though. That's not what he says.
No, in Variety, the cinematographer, he writes very passionately about his work on this film in a way that either suggests that there was a very different version of this, or he is just very passionate. Regardless, this is a guy who's like, he's mostly shot like sequels to horror franchises that I haven't seen any of and stuff. Like, this is a guy who he hasn't, most of his work that is on IMDb, whatever, like feature work, is stuff that I think, you know, you'd be forgiven for assuming the cinematographer of these films took the job as a paycheck. But this guy seems genuinely like extremely committed to his craft, very passionate about it.
Can I quote from him a little bit? So
I'd love that.
Listeners have a sense of this. I was totally won over by him. He says things, not even to his credit, is mostly in service of Schrader's, the sense that I get. And he says things like, I'm writing because I've just seen a movie, The Dying of the Light, with pictures I don't recognize, although the credits say I'm the director of photography. The film we shot had images with strong, violent colors and was dark. This one is not. A minor thing for some, of crucial importance for others. Skipping ahead a little bit, he talks about his duty as a cinematographer and quotes from the American Cinematographer Manual and says that his goal was to assure that what audiences will see on cinema and television screens faithfully reflects the look intended by the director. He says Schrader wanted color to play an unusual, extremely important role in the visual style of his movie, an expressionistic approach where color doesn't just represent moods and feelings, but meanings and symbols. And I gotta say, watching Dark, I believe it. That's the film that I saw.
And yet, well, this is despite the process of that film's creation, but I did just want to read one more bit of wonderful Paul Schrader bile. When the man directs it properly, it's quite a thing to behold.
It is.
So one of the producers, who's like also the lawyer or something, this is after he's been kicked off the movie, he sent Schrader links to clips and the trailer for Dying of the Light that had been posted on Fandango. There's something especially demoralizing about Fandango. Yeah. Totally without dignity. Yep. And Schrader wrote back right away, quote, "Why the fuck are you sending me this, you slime ball? You stole my life's work. I will never forget or forgive."
Schrader.
Yeah. So then, in the intervening years, like, so he says he falls into a depression. Eventually he gets the chance to make Dog Eat Dog with Nick Cage, which is really like a kind of phoenix rising from the ashes. Like, let me do this on my own terms. And that film he apparently negotiated basically by saying, if I can get Nick Cage, will you give me final cut? And they said yes. And so he did. Yep. It also has Willem Dafoe. I've seen that film. I remember really disliking it, but that was a long time ago. So I'm excited to find out what I think of it now. It is edited by a guy named Benjamin Rodriguez Jr., who is, it's kind of his first...
you're saying?
Or? No, Dog Eat Dog is kind of his first like big editing job, I believe.
Yeah.
And he had come up as an assistant editor to the guy who edited Natural Born Killers, which I think informs a lot of the look of how dark eventually turns out. I'm just looking that guy's name up. That guy's name is, I think, Hank Corwin or Brian Burdan. There's two guys. Probably Hank Corwin. He worked with Terrence Malick and Robert Redford also. So this guy edits Dog Eat Dog, and if anyone who's seen Dog Eat Dog knows, that film is visually like insane. He's he's doing all kinds of totally nutso things that sometimes work and sometimes don't, but are undoubtedly very, very innovative and weird and going for it. And so while making First Reformed, which Rodriguez also edits, Schrader thinks, I want to take another crack at Dying of the Light with this guy. Like, because Dog Eat Dog is kind of the style, it's got some of the style he was hoping to go for with Dying of the Light. And also, First Reformed is Schrader's very deliberately trying to make a movie that is slower, that is more transcendental. It's literally going to have less editing in it because it's going to have fewer edits. It's going to have like fewer cuts, you know?
Yeah.
And so he has like a DGA mandated 10-week editing process. He says, let's do it in 7, and we'll save 3 for Dying of the Light. I'm going to fix this thing. He contacts the producers, and he says, if I self-finance the edit of this, and I promise to turn all profits that accrue back to you, give you all of the money that comes out of, like, after posting this to iTunes, however much that costs, all the profits go to you. I'll just do it for the love of the game. Can I do a director's cut? And they say, fuck off.
Nasty. Yep.
Paul Schrader's offering to do something free. Like, you would only get money out of this.
Yeah.
Like, it's
you
it's
can't
just
lose except to lose face, the pride of saying,
and to
he's going to
basically
emphasize that he could have made a better movie.
Yeah, and set a precedent that you could eventually be talked into letting somebody do something creative. And so he decides, well, I am going to do it anyway. But he can't get access to any of the original. He can't get access to the dailies. He can't get access to raw footage without music or like sound mixing or color timing already on
and
it.
Compression and all these things. Yeah.
He literally has access to, he says, and this is in the Alex Ross Perry documentary, he's using the wrong term because he's an old man, but he says 3 or 4 CDs of footage of like different cuts.
Print footage.
Like DVDs or Blu-rays.
Post-processing, but pre-release, like the final film, because there are a couple scenes that are not in Dying of the Light.
He compares it to like Steven Soderbergh messing with Psycho or Raiders of the Lost Ark or something. It's literally it's like collage work. It's found footage, except that he shot it in the first place. So he and in the intervening time, Anton Yelchin's dead now. Like this is. A lot's different, but he and Rodriguez do this thing where they are editing it. They're adding a lot of like collage and sort of remixed footage from like a documentary about the CIA. Some of it apparently is maybe Paul Schrader's home movies from when he was a kid.
Yep.
There's lots of noticeable color blooming and like intentional digital artifacts and distorting of the image. At some points, it's clear that they are literally, and this is confirmed by the article, they're literally taking an iPhone and filming the screen in order to get like close-ups and handheld effects and stuff.
That's exactly right, and it's astonishing. It works so well for me, at least. I don't know how you feel about it, but there's points where they take a shot of, like you're saying, the presumably Dying of the Light or this original footage playing on a TV screen and shoot the TV screen so they can put that, and it's noticeable. You can tell that it's you can
see like the fucking LEDs or whatever, like the pixel, the edges of the pixels.
The artifacting
you can see.
and stuff. Yeah. But it's so fast, and like you said, Schrader, there's like a little preamble thing that he also put on Letterboxd where he talks about the fact that he was really excited at the time of this film to get involved with a more aggressive editing style.
Yeah, he says he was like he was figuring out that this is how he wanted the film to be when they took it away from him.
And it is, I mean, it's like the opposite of Transcendental style because it's frenetic, but to me, not obnoxious, not overwhelming. No. It's just heavy on montage contrast type stuff.
I mean, I find Natural Born Killers annoying. I find it to be too much and kind of like proud of itself, whereas this feels more, I mean, I can see the inspiration, but it feels a lot more like late Godard to me, like
it does.
Goodbye to Language.
That's exactly right.
And mixed with maybe like an Adam Curtis thing, like a hypernormalization.
I was also thinking about, I don't like this guy, nasty guy in real life, but Primer it reminded me of a little bit in the sense of like there's real elisions and gap editing, and there's these moments that it's not exactly early Godardian jump cuts, but it's sort of like these repetitive, like rhythmic shots that make you focus on whatever's happening in a very distinct way. And the color is really prominent. I don't know how you felt about it, but
there's a lot of color to, and it's literally has to be added after the fact. I mean, it's like putting a gel on the projector of the film. Like he can't really mess with it that much. He's also doing it apparently literally in 3 weeks.
Right.
The thing is like 70 minutes long.
Yes. It's like 74 minutes.
This version of the film is 74 minutes because he basically chops everything off after the meeting with Banir.
That's right. The film ends like mid-meeting with Banir and with an added little 2001 sequence. But I wanted to highlight some other changes before we move on.
We should. There's first of all the reinsertion of some of the more racist moments.
Yep. The film opens with an Ethan Hawke voiceover and images of brain scans. So it changes. We've talked about the classic thing of a film teaching you how to watch it.
Yeah.
It changes the focus of the movie. It changes how we should be interpreting these things. It turns it into a totally subjective, more traditionally Schrader, not just unreliable narrator, but suspect narrator. Who we are still trying to find some type of sympathy for or understanding with things like this.
To be clear, he's not...
Go ahead. Yeah.
I mean, he's allowed to do this for sport. He is not allowed ever to release this film. He is doing this exclusively for art's sake. Like, if he ever tries to make a single dollar from this, they can sue the fuck out of him.
Yep.
So he
uploads it to BitTorrent.
Well, first he decides he's going to do it for... So he has an archive. His papers are at UT Austin, and also at the UCLA archive. He's gonna give it to them digitally, so that anyone who wants to go look at these as if as research materials can do it. And then eventually he also uploads it to BitTorrent. I was looking at some BitTorrent news site article from the time where. I mean, it's really clear what this guy is interested in, which is mostly this is so cool for us. But it does point out that the user tried to upload it, tried to I'm not a torrent guy, I don't really know the terminology, but he basically tried to put it on BitTorrent several times over the course of a month before he got it right.
Wow, okay.
But that's July 4th, 2018, when he finally gets, when it first shows up on torrent sites. So it's available, it's now on the Internet Archive, but it's only available as a free curio.
Yep.
But yeah, so he gets Ethan Hawke to...
presumably because of the First Reform crossover.
He's recording a lot of voiceover for First Reform, so they could get 2 additional sentences out of him during those sessions. That's easy. But yeah, it opens with a brain scan.
I thought it was going to be kind of a boring... I mean, they talked about the black and whites playing with memory. I was worried about it being more memento type stuff that we've been seeing for 20 years at this point. And Schrader even has a quote, I forget in what interview, where he talks about the fact that he had lost his faith in subtlety. He says audiences don't respond to subtlety. You have to hit them over the head with things if you want them to pay attention to it or understand it or recognize that you're doing it on purpose. I think he says something about they're so used to modern TV or modern techniques that they won't even realize that you're doing something as an artistic statement. So
right. I mean, the things that Eisenstein was doing that would get him jailed are now things that advertisements do every time.
Exactly. Or a Vine can do and people don't blink at it. Yeah. So now, I mean, gone at this point.
Yeah, Vines can't do anything now.
Yeah, that's true. They can still affect me. But yeah, the United States shots are, we talked about the gel stuff. They look like desaturated, brown monochrome. It's just makes it gives an inflection to every one of those scenes that makes you wonder, all right, what is the argument about the CIA here? What is the argument about the relationship between these individuals in this desaturated environment? Is he correct if this is the place that he's trying to attribute these values to, these grand values? So it's not irony exactly or necessarily, but it's second guessing all of these elements in a way that is just, it's incredible how much more interesting it is. I really couldn't believe it. And just little cuts, like we said, during the chase in Romania, everything. What else?
So you just get so much more of a man in obvious decline and a film that is also declining. It's incredible that this wasn't the goal from the beginning.
Right.
Because I don't know what the film is without this. This doesn't seem like a fully formed idea without this.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
If anything, Dying of the Light kind of feels like something we shouldn't be
discussing
privy to.
Okay.
Well, no, I just mean it's like seeing an early draft of Moby Dick or something.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's like he just was figuring it out, or like seeing demos of yesterday where like he doesn't have the chords all together or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think, Rodriguez he's much younger than Schrader.
Yep.
He is able to, he's steeped in a different cinematic language. He's able to do things in the edit that, I mean, I don't think Schrader's that proficient with Final Cut, but you know what I mean. And in the Alex Ross Perry documentary, he talks about how, this Stan Brakhage style imagery is actually more legible to young people today because of the kind of stuff that they watch. As he puts it, watching picture-in-picture while texting, which like...
He's half right. I get what he's trying to say.
It's not like they're using their TV to watch Frasier during an NBA game.
That's right.
But I know what he's talking about. Or an NBA game during Frasier, I guess. But it's really incredible what they're able to just generate through...
It really is. And just a few more things. Maybe this is not interesting for the listener, but I feel like it has to be addressed because it's so, it has gone unrecognized. Even if you try to look up descriptions of the film, I'm not sure they capture it. But yeah, the doctor scene where he's finding out his diagnosis, it's shot in like a classic 2-shot, but when they cut to the doctor, increasingly more of his face is cut off and you're seeing mostly empty space next to him and like half the doctor's face as he's talking. And it's just a potent visual underlining of this idea that he's struggling to pay attention or he's in shock about the diagnosis or whatever. It just adds emotional depth to all these different things. And later, as he's exiting this memory center or whatever, he's walking backwards down a hallway for a brief second.
Yeah. Well, you also get...
I was so taken with it.
That specific part where he's walking down the hallway and like it cuts back, that was a little bit Exhibit at the beginning of Pimp My Ride to me. That was the one effect where I was like, I don't know. But he's trying stuff.
It's a lot. And I can see it being too showy.
There's a scene where he goes to see an old buddy of his who's already in memory care.
Correct. And yes. This is the main new scene that's added, I think, in the film.
And he basically, like, the guy is not responsive to Lake. And he says, do you want me to sing to you? And then he starts like reciting the halls of Montezuma.
Hymn.
Yeah.
Yep.
In a way that just feels like this gives the film so much more depth to know that this guy is raging against the dying of the light.
Yeah.
Because he's aware of it, not just because he's like a fucking hothead. Because we don't have any sense of him reacting to anything that might emotionally upset him in this way in the dying of the light version. And there's just like a sense of acceleration, like a sense of pace and tension from the increasingly erratic image style, although it's erratic from the beginning.
They eliminate the explanatory music that's in there for the first version, and I felt so vindicated. I always complain about this. I feel maybe it's tiresome, but just to have the film speak for itself and have just a few music cues and have, instead of deciding what the emotional resonance is of the scene, you're saying, well, it could be any of several sort of like registers here, depending on your understanding of it.
I mean, we talked a little bit about some ideas in the canyons anticipating First Reformed in some way, some of these concerns. And this, especially with the bloodlust of the Yelchin character, reminded me, this feels like the germ of the card counter a little bit to me. So much more so than... And like that film has a climactic, like two guys sitting across from each other in chairs. Prior to violence. And so it's just, it's a lot more exciting to me. And then Schrader's also talking about how exciting it was to be editing these two counterposed films at the same time, First Reformed and Dark. I can imagine
that, yeah.
And then, I don't know if you caught this in the Perry doc, he says he's editing an alt-right film and an alt-left film at the same time.
I did.
That's just a misunderstanding of those terms, I think. I think
so too.
Okay, that's great. That's all we need to say.
Yeah, same thing. I mean, it's like the social justice stuff to me, but
right. But he's talking about how this is the sort of thing facing him now I believe this was made prior to
Mary Beth Hurt's diagnosis.
His wife's diagnosis, but certainly,
I think so too.
I mean, I'm sure he had friends that were going through this at this point in his life. He's 70. And then he says this, which I have an extended clip of in the documentary, that took this from being like a, hey, did you know Paul Schrader got cranky and made his own version of a film that he leaked to BitTorrent. That was my impression of this going into it, and this really sort of enriches my understanding of this film's position in his career. So I'm going to play this clip.
Please.
Was losing control of this movie incredibly emotionally frustrating, or is it just like...
It changed my life. I've been so creative ever since. I mean, these people tried to kill me. I fell into alcoholism, depression. I thought, and I thought that was it. And then, like I said to Nick Cage, we got to work together again. We have to take this thing off of me, and in that Nietzschean way, because it didn't kill me, it made me strong enough to make Dog Eat Dog, and then make First Reform and make this and make things I'm thinking of. And also it freed me from that dreadful groupthink of commercial entertainment.
So the part at the end where it sounds like he's crying, he is tearing up. Yeah. And so, I mean, I was not prepared for the revelation that Dying of the Light is the thing that basically created this late period Schrader renaissance.
That's right. This is like the critical inflection point. But based on what I saw, I'm inclined to believe it.
No, I mean, the level of just fucking, I don't know, interest, creative verve, he's Dark is the work of a man who is excited about cinema, so much more than The Canyons, Adam Resurrected, The Walker. These all feel like films that, some of them have their merits, but they feel like films that are exhausted a bit. And Dark is that's a guy who's got some pep in his step, even if he's sitting on a couch directing a 35-year-old editor at a computer.
If we're allowed to speculate, the fact that they maybe made the worst version of a film that he was on the road to making at a certain point, like you're saying, it's a draft and it's totally unfair to judge it based on that. But to maybe recognize in your own work the DNA of something this bad, I could see it being motivating in that sense as well. First of all, it's a betrayal artistically and professionally to be treated this way, but also to say, okay, maybe I'm not pushing myself to find or express the way that I used to, and what am I going to do about that?
I mean, this is very much a sequel to our discussion of The Exorcist prequel, because Schrader talked about that film as, because of the way that Exorcist the Beginning, the Rennie Harlan version, came out, he was then inspired and I guess allowed in his mind to go even further and more classical with the editing of his version of Dominion prequel to The Exorcist, because it was a counterpoint to this very kind of MTV early 2000s editing style of the Rennie Harlan version. So in the same way, I think the extremely by the numbers, dispassionate, dog shit, cheap editing of Dying of the Light, I think probably opened up for him the chance to go completely fucking insane. And what happens at the end of Dark is Cage says there's a lot to remember, and then the film goes into this
just to
phantasmagorical reverie.
Well, I want to let you explain it. I just want to frame for the listeners. This is, again, in the conversation with Bannier, he's sitting deciding whether he's going to kill him. Bannier realizes, he says, "Oh, you're sick too." Cage says, yeah, except mine's a disease of the brain. I'm forgetting. Benir says, oh, there's a lot to forget.
Right. And then, the sort of the avatar of, because don't forget, Schrader said about The Exorcist, it's a very potent metaphor.
Yeah.
The most potent metaphor in cinema. It's a priest and the devil arguing over the soul of a little girl. So here we have a guy representing America and a guy representing Islam or the Arab world or not America, the global South, whatever. They're arguing over like their respective legacies and their whether they should be allowed to live, basically. And like one of them is losing his goddamn mind. One of them is Joe Biden and Mitch McConnell, and
he starts to sing "Baby It's Cold Outside," and they play these home movies.
Having trouble getting around the room, but he's like talking about writing and publishing on websites and like thinking about new ways to
he's a poster.
He's a poster. Yeah, but one of these guys has some kind of future ahead of him, at least like an intellectual one, and the other one says there's a lot to remember, and then it turns into this reverie, this like kaleidoscopic descent into descent into mental oblivion, but instead of darkness, it does feel like just every neuron firing all at once.
Yeah, it's like actual memories turn into impressions, turn into colors or like categories of understanding the world, and then it fades into nothing.
Yeah, I mean a bit of the ending of Last Temptation in there as well.
Yeah,
I think. Yeah, it's like really exciting, and then to know that this also was like the 1-2 punch of this artistic closure, and as Chad Harbold, our guest on the Exorcist episode, said, he points out how savvy Schrader is at like the current landscape of independent film,
it's
and
true.
I think
this
experience was a big part of him kind of knocking all of his conceptions about how Hollywood works out of his head, and like I wouldn't be surprised if there is a connection between his experience with fucking Red Granite International and Grindstone Entertainment.
Yeah,
Grindstone Entertainment is the distributor.
Group. Yep.
Some connection between that experience and his being more flexible and more forward thinking than some of his contemporaries have been, because you don't really hear about
everything.
Like the new Walter Hill movies as much as you hear about the new Paul Schrader movies. Walter Hill has been making some stuff, but nobody cares about.
And to drive this home, after this sort of oblivion sequence, then we cut to an unexplained version of the Dying of Light ending, which just shows his grave, Evan Lake's grave.
Yep.
I believe that is the last image before it cuts to black.
Yes. And Father Toller is fixing the grave. It's fallen over.
That's exactly right. I mean, it's but he's like, putting to rest this old version and whatever, opening up whatever remains. Yep.
Yeah, I just I mean, there's some other stuff we could talk about forever, but I think I encourage everybody listening to this to check out Dark. I mean, I think you do kind of.
I know. I'm in a tough position.
50% of you. Okay. Yeah. Everyone whose last name starts A through
M.
Yeah, A through M probably. I would watch Dying of the Light and then watch Dark. And if your last name starts with N through Z, just watch Dark. And then you can watch Dying of the Light afterward.
And we will do a little report back if you guys actually...
So podcastforme@gmail.com. We'd love to hear a capsule review. And if we don't get very many of them, it's just saying right now it's because our listeners are shy, not because they are not that many. And all right, we've got...
But I agree with you. It's hard. I genuinely wouldn't even recommend Dying of the Light to fans of Kandahar or something, because it's bad at that.
It doesn't have... Yeah, Kandahar's got... some exciting moments of like movement.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Doesn't have. I don't remember any extremely bad polo shirts in Kandahar, but it's been a few months since we watched it.
It's true.
There's one more thing we got to do on the show.
Yep.
Which is the sexual obsession check-in. And Paul Schrader, he recently, we got a little news on Non Compos Mentis. That is the official title. He's also got another thing he's working on. The man is prolific. He's inspired.
Busy.
He's caught the muse. But he had this to say about Non Compos Mentis, one of his upcoming projects.
I've never written a script about sexual obsession, and so that's the one I'm doing now.
Here on the show, we are going through line by line to determine to what extent Paul Schrader has made films that are not about sexual obsession. This film is about obsession. Sex does not really come into it. Depending on which version of the film you watch, there's some suggestion that he had a romantic dalliance with the Irene Jacob character, but it's no longer, doesn't seem to have it in him. So it's a no for me. No sexual obsession, although plenty of other kinds of obsession.
Yep, it's a no for me as well for all the reasons you said. The things that displace sexual obsession.
Absolutely. We do have, I forgot to mention this, I'm so sorry. We have a sponsor on this week.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And a special friend is going to read the copy for us.
Oh, great. That's quick. So nice.
In Sun and Steel, we read of a secret energy formula that brought Mishima to a heightened state of physique and focused mind. Today, we know, of course, that he was talking about G Fuel's caffeine-free hydration flavors.
That's just, I still have the PewDiePie Mishima ad read on the soundboard. Always
a lot
fun.
of times Jake starts the calls with that before we do the record, and 100% hit rate for me. Never
he's
fails
got a
to make me
goofy
laugh.
ass way of talking. I wonder if he and Alexander Karim ever met.
It's a great
two Swedes.
It's true.
Countrymen.
You're right. Yep.
I'm just gonna say this real quick. Alexander Karim, hot. I don't know how
he is.
I don't know how
he
to put
is.
it. Yeah.
He's right. Jake's right.
Look this guy up if you want to see a hot guy. Don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
Silas Carson as well. Don't look up Ki-Adi-Mundi. Especially do not look up the version of Ki-Adi-Mundi that appears on the Clone Wars TV show. Really horrifying designs on that show. Did you ever watch that? Not the Genndy Tartakovsky one. That's
I know what you
the
mean.
hand-drawn one is really
classic.
cool.
Yeah.
But the 3D animated one, they made them all look like kind of like tiki mugs.
Okay.
Like, you know how friend of the show, Jeremy Allison, knows what I'm talking about, but there's a big market now for like, it's a tiki mug that is Dracula, but Dracula in tiki mug style, and with just like sharp angles.
I don't know if
to
you're
make
allowed to do that. But it's tough because tiki stuff is already made up.
They're doing it already.
I believe it.
Yeah. Everyone look on the Clone Wars TV show looks like a tiki mug. So that's...
Yeah, we don't like that.
It's the last word on that. All right, that's about going to do it for our episode on Dying of the Light and
sure is.
Dark. Dylan Thomas guy at all? Never cared for Dylan Thomas.
Really. I like Dylan Thomas just fine. Just fine, yeah.
I
believe I early on in the podcast misattributed a T.S. Eliot quote to Dylan Thomas, so I guess I'm not that big of a fan.
Early on in the run of the show, or earlier tonight when we were talking?
No, early on in the run of the show.
Got it. Well, I'm sure we'll go back with a fine-tooth comb and find that snippet right out.
Yep.
I'm imagining taking a little Thomas the Tank Engine train and putting it a little toy, putting it in a jar with some brine and a little bit of dill.
Wow. Yeah, Dylan Thomas. Yep.
He's going to taste
so tastes good.
So nice.
Salty and vinegary. Yeah.
Yeah. Crisp. Anyway, remember to subscribe, rate us, write a review of the show. It helps us on the algorithm. If you like the show, tell a friend, tell your dad. Write a classified memo about Muhammad Banir.
Mm-hmm.
Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Podcastyforme. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, or you're interested in co-hosting a two-person Paul Schrader podcast, you can email us at podcastyforme@gmail.com. Thank you to Jeremy Allison for our artwork. If you weren't paying attention for the last 30 seconds, you can go to podcastyforme.com. It's all there.
Yep.
Next week, Snoop Dogg Eat Dog.
That's right.
We're talking about, this is Schrader's ecstatic return to enjoying filmmaking. It's his make good with Nick Cage. Old friend of the show, Willem Dafoe is back. And you know who else appears in the film Dog Eat Dog. Paul Schrader himself as Greco the Greek.
That's right.
Yeah. And then one last little word. Interesting work of filmed media about someone studying terrorism who's also losing their mind about it. Check out the one season of AMC's Rubicon. Pretty cool show.
Yeah.
You ever watch Rubicon?
Yeah, that was a classic show, a college show for us. I think it came out.
James Badgedale, Christopher Evan Welch, some other guys with 3 names, probably.
Was that an AMC?
It was AMC. It was like they tried, it was, I think their first at bat after Mad Men. Was that in Turn,
Low
Washington
Winter
Spies.
Sun? Okay, yeah.
Yes, Low Winter Sun was another one. So they had the 1-2 of Breaking Bad and Mad Men.
Yeah.
I think. And then they tried a bunch more shit. Hell on Wheels might have been on there
Hell
too.
on Wheels. I was waiting for my chance to call it Hell on Wheels. Yeah, a bunch of whiffs, but Rubicon.
A bunch of whiffs, and then Rubicon was cool, but it didn't get renewed. So check it out on probably like movies123.ru or whatever the fuck he is watching.
Yeah,
Can you give us one of your cursed URLs?
To be clear, I don't use these for films for the show because I like to watch those in Blu-ray quality. And
you also shouldn't go to these websites because they will make your computer catch on fire.
Yeah, I don't use these websites at all, but I believe lookmovie2.to is a pretty dependable one. From what I've heard.
2.2?
Basically, yeah.
Wow. All right, we'll see you on lookmovie2.to.
Bye.